UN colleague of yours, Tom Fletcher, relatively recently appointed as Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, he said just hours ago, he said, a tough reality for humanitarians is that we need to make a calculated retreat. He was talking in the context of what's happened to USAID and indeed the UK pulling back on some of its commitment to overseas aid. Do you, with your human rights work, feel that you're going to have to make a calculated retreat too?
Look, the law is very clear, and we shouldn't forget how it emerged. It emerged after 2 world wars, cataclysmic events, Great Depression, Holocaust, atrocity crimes, and it created a legal framework for states that states themselves have assumed to be respected in when it comes to interactions among themselves, state and individuals and the environment and the climate. And yes, that law is extremely valuable and needs to be not only maintained but strengthened. And it's actually the future, and it's the present and the future, I should say. And I don't think there is much to compromise about the law, because that law is accepted by states themselves, including by the United States of America.
Well, what it seems to be the case is that raw power now counts more than international law. I just wonder, despite the positivity you've tried to project to me, have you ever felt more depressed, more bleak about the way the world works?
Look, we see the judiciary working in many countries around the world, including in the US. We see it working in Europe when governments go beyond what they should be doing. And I have the conviction that even among populations, when they vote for people, they don't vote for cruelty. They vote for something that is still built on fundamental human connections and values and principles. What we need to do is to communicate better about it. We need to show that what people have in terms of grievances is about their rights. It's about education, it's about housing, it's about health, it's about how they interact with each other. And that's going to be the big challenge for us.
Volker Turk, we have to end there, but thanks very much for joining me from Geneva.
Thank you.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Well, good morning. We are just ahead of World Report here at CBC. I'm Margo Watt. Information Radio is coming your way as well. First, let's go to our CBC Winnipeg newsroom for the very latest on all the news here from overnight. Here's Lauren Donnelly.
Good morning. On again, off again, U.S. President Trump said he'll pause tariffs on some Canadian and Mexico exports while promising more tariffs are on the way. Manitoba business owners across sectors say the back and forth is taking a toll. And Canadian scientists say they're worried about U.S. cuts to weather forecasting and climate science. We'll have more on those stories coming up in your local news on Information Radio.
All right. Thanks very much, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Looking at the forecast for Winnipeg today, we'll see increasing cloud with a high of -5 degrees. For tonight, we have a chance of flurries again, the temperature rising to -3 by morning. For tomorrow, we'll start off cloudy with some clearing later in the day and a high of +2. Right now in Winnipeg, it is -14 degrees, and we have a fresh little layer of snow from overnight, so keep that in mind if you're out driving early this morning. Well, coming up here on the program today, we'll be talking with Marco Vellotti first up today. He is the editor-in-chief of iPolitics. We'll get his thoughts on the final days of the Liberal leadership race and when Canadians could be heading to the polls. How soon will that be? Also on the show, how much personal information are your kids giving up when they download free mobile games? Well, CBC Marketplace went in search of answers about that, and we'll have the story on that coming up as well. A little later on in the show, we were telling you yesterday how American booze isn't flowing across the border. And data that informs our weather forecasts, flood forecasting, and climate science could be next. Our CBC reporter Bartley Kivas will join us to talk about how U.S. government cuts could affect our own science. Also today on the show, it will be the 50th edition of the Winnipeg Folk Festival. Can you believe that? 50 years since that wonderful party began out at Birds Hill Provincial Park. And the lineup for the festival is being released this morning, so we'll have complete details on that. I'm Margot Watt. You're with CBC Radio, and World Report is next.
On cue.
The Oscar-winning director Bong Joon-ho's new film is called Mickey 17, and it's about a man who can't die. He just keeps getting reprinted.
On Earth, nothing was working out, and I wanted to get the hell out of there.
Director Bong will be here to tell you what he hopes this movie might say about authoritarianism and bad politicians.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. The U.S. may be temporarily stepping back from most of its tariffs on Canadian goods, but Canadian lawmakers say the retreat isn't enough. Ottawa and the provinces plan to keep their retaliations in place until all tariffs are off the table. Kate McKenna following this from our Parliamentary Bureau. Kate, what's the reaction from the federal government?
One message is loud and clear from Ottawa and the provinces. This 30-day partial tariff pause is not good enough. The federal government won't lift $30 billion in retaliatory tariffs, even if it won't proceed with a second and bigger wave of retaliation in a few weeks. The on-again, off-again tariffs leave Canadian businesses in turmoil and uncertainty. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc spoke to CBC's Power and Politics.
Hopefully we're lining up a conversation and a discussion with the Americans that's much more coherent in the sense it's not this week, it's this sector of the economy.
He says the majority of trade to the U.S. can now meet the bar of being compliant with the existing free trade agreement and avoid tariffs for now. But there are other looming deadlines. There's a steel and aluminum tariff that could come into effect next week. There could be more tariffs on April 2nd. Plus, yesterday's announcement from Trump is being described as a pause, not a total walk back.
Kate, you mentioned the provinces. They've implemented their own retaliatory measures, and they're not backing down either. What can you tell us about that?
Provinces have announced their own ways of fighting back, including taking American booze off the shelves. And Ontario Premier Doug Ford is making good on his threat to slap a 25% levy on electricity his province sells to 1.5 million American customers. He's not the only one. British Columbia Premier David Eby says his government is planning a law that could toll trucks traveling to Alaska. And Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew says his government plans to review its contracts selling hydroelectricity to the United States. All of this in a bid to pressure Donald Trump to back down completely and send a clear message that this tariff whiplash hurts everyone.
Kate McKenna in Ottawa. Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
We're just hours away from the start of March break, and people in some parts of the country over the next few days, 140,000 people are expected to travel through Toronto's Pearson International Airport. But this year, there's a difference in where some of those people will be traveling to. Many Canadians saying they've rerouted their vacation plans to destinations outside the U.S. For more on this, we're joined by Linda Ward. So, Linda, what more can you tell us about this push to avoid travel to the U.S.?
Leisure bookings to American cities are down. We're hearing from Flight Centre Travel Group Canada, who says that they have dropped 40% in February from the same month last year. And we're also hearing numbers from a number of airlines as well. Air Canada is offering 10% fewer flights to Florida, Arizona, Las Vegas, popular sun destinations for Canadians at this time of the year. WestJet is reporting a shift in bookings from the U.S. to Mexico and the Caribbean. Flair's U.S.-bound flights are down 24% year over year for March, and Sunwing Airlines has just scrapped all its U.S. flights altogether. And it's not just that people aren't booking, but they're also canceling. 1 in 5 customers canceled their trips to the United States over the past 3 months because of anger over these tariffs and talk about making Canada the 51st state and, of course, the weak Canadian dollar. That doesn't help. In Ontario, kids are starting March break this afternoon, and Amy and Matthew Gleiser from Paris, Ontario, had planned to go to Myrtle Beach in South Carolina with their kids, but changed those plans.
With all of the tariff threats and this constant Canada is a 51st state, which we hate, we just didn't feel in good conscience that we could go down to the United States and spend money and, support an economy in a country that really is out to hurt us as Canadians right now.
So, Linda, do we have a sense of how all this might be affecting the U.S. travel industry?
Well, it will have an effect. The U.S. Travel Association has warned just a 10% drop in Canadian visitors. We're talking about 2 million fewer visits would mean more than $2 billion in lost spending and a loss of 14,000 jobs. Flight Centre now also says it has seen a pause in business travel to the United States. And if that gets worse, that would have a much larger impact.
Linda Ward joining us in studio. Thanks, Linda.
You're welcome.
To Paris. Major travel delays being announced at the city's main train station. It was prompted by the discovery of an unexploded bomb from the Second World War. It has brought train travel to a halt, including Eurostar trains to and from London. Officials say the incident will, quote, strongly disrupt travel all day. Bombs left over from both world wars are regularly discovered around France, but it is very rare to find them in such a crowded location. At least 18 people are dead after overnight Russian attacks in Ukraine, including 4 children. Fire crews in Kharkiv doused the flames. Officials say Russia targeted Ukraine's energy and gas infrastructure in a large-scale missile and drone attack. The attack came hours after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said talks with the U.S. on ending the 3-year war will take place next week. Hundreds of survivors of forced or coerced sterilization are gathering in Ottawa. The Healing Conference, the first of its kind. Not only is it bringing together women with shared experiences, but also drawing attention to a shameful part of Canada's history. Juanita Taylor has more.
I was alone.
Katie Bear was only 21 years old when a tubal ligation was performed on her in a Saskatoon hospital. It's a surgical procedure to prevent pregnancy by permanently blocking, clipping, or removing a woman's fallopian tubes.
I woke up in recovery, shivering, thinking, what did they just do to me?
Bear had just given birth to her 4th child when she was coerced to signing a consent form.
Then I was told that, because I was 21 and had 4 kids, that I probably shouldn't have any more, that my kids would be taken away.
Today, Bear is sharing her story at a conference bringing more than 100 survivors together at the first annual gathering of Indigenous people of forced or coerced sterilization. It's being organized by the Survivors Circle for Reproductive Justice. Harmony Red Sky is the group's executive director.
So for some, it will be coming to actually acknowledge and share their story for the very first time, but also to find a connection or a unity in an actual group of survivors.
Ontario Independent Senator Yvonne Boyer has been instrumental in raising awareness and finding survivors.
Now, the last I heard, it was 50,000 and growing. And I don't believe the North has been touched yet.
In 2022, Boyer introduced Bill S-20, which would see forced sterilization become a criminal act. The bill passed the Senate and was moved to the House of Commons, which is currently prorogued. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Ottawa.
A CBC Marketplace investigation has found popular gaming apps are profiling and tracking children. Its team of investigative journalists were even able to trace the whereabouts of a child in Toronto using data available for sale. As Christine Birak reports, it's all despite rules in place banning online collection of children's information.
Sliding his finger across the screen, 9-year-old Jamie's busy playing a mobile game based on its App Store rating.
It said E for everyone.
Mom Sarah Dermody assumed kids' privacy laws would apply, but we show her the game's fine print.
It says games are not meant to be used if you are under 16.
Wow. The age and the content rating doesn't always match the privacy policy.
It is really scandalous that it is so easy to get information from the kids like this.
Maude Bonifant is a Canada Research Chair on Gaming, Technologies and Society. She says many free game apps make money off ads and third parties collecting behavioral and other data, including location. Information's also being used to build profiles of people that other companies can pay to access in the future.
So we have a profiling, really a long-term profiling of a person, and we can look at it when he will want to get a job.
The data posing as game developers, we approached 4 global data sellers to test whether their data included information on kids.
None of our data will have anyone under 16.
One gives us location data for over 500,000 devices in Toronto. Hundreds are at elementary schools. Intentional or not, we're able to confirm a specific child walked to school, sometimes a convenience store, and back home for a month.
It is a bit scary.
After checking privacy settings and tracking on Jamie's devices, Sarah Dermody says she's not downloading any new apps without reading their privacy policy first. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
And you can watch that full investigation tonight at 8 p.m., 8:30 in Newfoundland, on CBC TV, CBC Gem, or on YouTube. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube. I'm Margot Watt, sitting in for Marcy Marcusa. Coming up on the show, days out from the finish line, we'll have a look at the Liberal leadership race that wraps up this Sunday. How much personal information are your kids giving up when they download free mobile games? CBC Marketplace went in search of some answers. We'll have that story coming up. And also today, tariff anxiety. How are Manitobans feeling about this on-again, off-again trade war with the U.S.? We'll hear what you had to say. This is Information Radio on CBC. Let's get the very latest from our CBC Winnipeg newsroom. Here's Lauren Donnelly.
Good morning. The province has pulled U.S. booze from Liquor Mart shelves, but one private Winnipeg wine store says it can't afford to stop selling its existing stock. Porium co-owner Scott Holden says they aren't bringing in any new U.S. wines, but they're selling off what they have at a discount so they can buy product from other places like Canada. And after a 3-game losing streak, the Jets have snapped the skid. Winnipeg chalked up a win against the Philadelphia Flyers last night. I'll have the details in your next local newscast at 6:30.
All right. Thanks very much, Lauren.
You're welcome.
And we say good morning to our studio crew here this morning. Our YouTube producer is Kevin Nipatebo. Good morning, Kevin. Abby Adeyemi is our technical producer and covers the weather for us. Hello, Abby.
Good morning.
And Chloe Friesen is our show director and covering the commute for us. Good morning, Chloe.
Good morning.
How are things looking so far this morning?
I mean, it's early, Margot. So far, so good. My commute in was easy peasy. Hopefully it's the same for you if you're on the roads right now. But of course, if something does change out there, we always love to hear from you on the commuter line at 204-788-3093.
And one thing to add to those commutes is the snow on the ground. It's going to be slippery for some people. So take it easy out there. Looking at the weather condition, expect a mix of sun and clouds. We do have a chance of light snow in some regions. It gets chilly in up north. We're seeing temperatures around -30, and the south will be warming up to -5. Right now, Winnipeg, we're sitting at -14. A sunny day ahead, but the clouds will move in this afternoon. We warm up to 5 degrees.
Well, we will soon learn who will replace Justin Trudeau and lead the Liberals into the next election. This Sunday, online voting will end, and the winner of the party's leadership race will be announced. Meanwhile, opposition leaders already seem to be in election campaign mode, and speculation is rampant about when voters could head to the polls. For a look at the final days of the Liberal leadership race, we have reached Marco Vellotti. He's the editor-in-chief of iPolitics, and he joins us from Ottawa by Zoom. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
So what have the strategies been for the individual candidates in the final days of the race?
Yeah, really things haven't shifted that much. I think we're at the point now where we're just identifying supporters, making sure that, the candidates are making sure that their supporters can have voted. There's a verification process you have to go through. Some trickiness has been identified, so I think they're helping their voters work through those challenges. For the most part, the strategy hasn't really changed. If you want to vote in this race, you have to register as a Liberal by January 27th. I think just under 400,000 people did so. So that pool of voters hasn't really grown. You can't really expand that. So it's been, so as a result, the strategies that have been, kind of in place since that time have just been, have kind of stayed static. Mark Carney talking about his economic record, his experience weathering crisis. Chrystia Freeland talking about her experience dealing with Trump. Karina Gould pitching herself as a face of generational change and targeting more progressives. And Frank Bayless saying, I'm the only truly independent voice here, totally untethered from the Trudeau government. So not too much has changed strategy-wise. It's just a matter of getting out the vote.
Now, what do you make of Chrystia Freeland saying this week that she would invite Mark Carney to be finance minister if she wins the race?
Yeah, it's an interesting move. If you look at the metrics available to us, fundraising dollars, endorsements, she's definitely trailing by Mark Carney by a wide margin. He has a lot of momentum. Polls show that, he would be the most popular leader if he were to win the race. So I think this is an effort from her to kind of win some soft supporters back, saying, hey, just because you were going to vote for me, just because I become leader, doesn't mean we're going to lose Mark Carney, who's generated some excitement and interest amongst Liberals. We can still kind of have this solid team, and he'll be a prominent voice on my cabinet and kind of pitch that to Canadians. Will it be effective? I don't really know. I mean, this is something Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tried to replace Chrystia Freeland with Mark Carney. So I don't really know if the logistics would work out. But right now, I think it's about her sales pitch to voters saying, hey, you can vote for me without getting rid of Mark Carney.
Many are predicting that Carney will win. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet right now. Before the campaigns really started in earnest, he was the front runner. Once he got off the ground and he was able to win so many endorsements from cabinet ministers, from MPs, he just solidified that front runner status. And I don't think anything's kind of changed, even though he had a bit of a shaky performance in the French language debate last month. I think if you look at leadership races, they almost all come down to who's best suited to lead us into the next election. This race, it's even more heightened because we're probably going to go to election very, very soon. So polls show that Mark Carney would give the Liberals a boost in the polls. It's tough to kind of, dim his shine if that's what the polls are showing at this point. So I still think he's the odds-on favorite to win and likely winning on the first ballot.
The Tories have been focusing their attacks on Carney. How much could those attacks sway Liberal voters and voters in a general election?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. The Conservatives have put a lot of money and a lot of resources into defining Mark Carney. He's still someone who's a relatively unknown, asset for many Canadians. That being said, I don't know if the focus has truly shifted to Mark Carney at this stage, even though he could be becoming our next prime minister in a matter of days. And that's because, we're in the middle of a trade war, and the outgoing PM has generated a lot of attention both here and across the globe for how he's responding to the Trump administration. Everything seems to be taking a backseat to this tariff war. So unfortunately, I don't know if we can even say these Conservatives' attacks have been effective or ineffective. I think we'll have to wait until Mark Carney formally becomes the PM. Of course, if that happens, I should put as a big asterisk. We'll have to wait till the results on Sunday before determining whether these attacks have had any effect. But certainly an effort to get out early and often to define Mark Carney in the minds of voters.
Could you walk us through what's going to be happening on Sunday?
Yeah, we're promised a tight show. We are told that the leadership program will start at 5 p.m. We're expecting speeches from Jean Chrétien and the outgoing PM, Justin Trudeau. We're also anticipating that whoever wins the race will address supporters. So they told us it will start at 5 and wrap up by 7. We do know that, even if there are multiple ballots, there shouldn't really be any delay. That's because voters were given one ballot and then were asked to rank their preferences. So, if there is any delay, it's just for dramatic purposes. So we should expect things to wrap up pretty quickly on Sunday.
And how quickly, Marco, do you think the handover will be from Justin Trudeau?
Very quick. The PM said, earlier this week, in terms of the succession timeline, it'd be a matter of a discussion with whoever wins the leadership race, and they would meet with him. I would imagine that would happen really soon, probably as early as Monday. And the PM also said he had no interest in sticking around. So I would assume that, this time next week, we'll have the PM and a new prime minister installed, and then it will be up to them to kind of determine next steps.
Right. Next steps, election call. When might we expect that?
Yeah, I assume that if Mark Carney wins, it'll be very soon. The Liberals don't really have much to gain by waiting, especially if Mark Carney is the leader. He doesn't have a seat in the House of Commons. If they, the House is prorogued until March 24th. If the House resumes sitting, Mark Carney can't be there, so you're giving a platform to the opposition party leaders. Also, they've enjoyed a little polling boost. Why why kind of tempt faith? Why not just go when the iron's hot? So I would expect an an election call to happen by March 23rd.
Great to have you with us this morning. Thanks, Marco.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Marco Vellotti is the editor-in-chief of iPolitics.
The Liberal Party will make their choice on who they want as leader and Canada's next Prime Minister. How will they lead in these uncertain times? And with a federal election just around the corner, CBC News breaks down what this means for the nation and what this means for you. Join Susan Bonner and Catherine Cullen for a CBC News radio special, Liberal Leadership 2025, Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern on CBC Radio 1 or the CBC News app.
It has been 5 years since the COVID pandemic first hit Canada in a significant way. While it may no longer be top of mind for many, the impact of the virus is very much ongoing, and it's still being studied by experts like Dr. Craig Jenny. He's a professor in the Department of Microbiology, Immunology, and Infectious Diseases at the University of Calgary.
The virus isn't going away. It's still here. It still continues to make people sick. I mean, to put it in perspective, just last year alone, we lost over 800 Albertans to this virus. So it is still a significant illness. And you know, we continue to have other infections, flu and RSV. So this is adding to the strain that we had experienced before the pandemic. I mean, we continue to see this virus change. I hesitate to use the word evolve. It continues to change. And when it does so, it manages to dodge our immune memory, or at least partly dodge it. So, you know, this is why people get reinfected. Every year we're seeing more variants emerge, and that likely will continue for the next several to unfortunately many years into the future. It's not seasonal yet, although we are seeing larger spans between the waves. And you know, as we move forward in the coming years, it likely will become a little more seasonal. This one is a little more infectious than flu, so it's going to be less constrained by the seasons, but still, in Canada, in winter, the air is drier. It's easier for respiratory viruses to infect you. We gather indoors. School is back in session. Those are perfect scenarios to amplify viral spread. So, you know, winters are always going to be challenging. And as we move forward, we may see a more seasonal pattern to this particular virus. We've done a very good job over the past 5 years of dealing with the acute COVID. So when you get sick, how do we treat that? How do we basically get you over that hump? But we're learning a lot more. So, I mean, I'm sure most people have heard of this concept of long COVID, which is still really, you know, this mysterious, enigmatic kind of disease. It is often different in different individuals, but it is very real. And we can see biological markers that there's this lasting impact on the body. We're also learning that COVID can reprogram parts of our immune system and perhaps change how we respond to additional infections. And then, I mean, the one thing that does get left behind is that people that were sick and recover often still have actual physical damage, so lung damage or other things that are lingering. And the ones that we've lost have left family behind. And that is, again, a lingering and lasting impact.
Dr. Craig Jenny is a professor in the Department of Microbiology at the University of Calgary. It is 6:22 minus 15 degrees in Winnipeg. Some light snow overnight, so a little slippery out there. We'll see increasing cloud today with a high of -5. Back in November, Winnipeg's field guide traveled to Chicago to perform with Audiotree. That's a record label and live music streaming platform. Just last week, he released the show on his new EP. It's titled Field Guide on Audiotree. You can also watch the full performance on YouTube. From it, this is Field Guide with a live version of Leave You Lonely.
I don't say it to me.
Recorded live on Chicago's Audio Tree, that was Leave You Lonely by Winnipeg's own Field Guide.
CBC Marketplace has got your back. From sneaky phone scams and unsafe products to hospital wait times impacting the health of children.
Tell me what you're thinking right now.
I just hate that he's had to go through this. And, if he'd had his surgery earlier, it would never have gotten to this situation. He would never be this severe.
Hospital wait times on CBC Marketplace with Asha Tomlinson and David Common. Sunday afternoon at 12:30, 1 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
We are just ahead of our local news at the bottom of the hour. First, let's get a quick update on traffic. Here's Chloe.
Not much going on out there on the roads here in Winnipeg, other than a light dusting of snow, so do watch out. That might create some slippery conditions. But of course, if you spot any stalls, collisions, or anything else getting in your way on your commute this morning, give us a call at 204-788-3093.
We're looking at increasing cloud. Thank you, Chloe. Today, a high of -5 degrees, maybe some light snow overnight. Tonight, just like we had last night. For this evening, the temperature rising to -3 by morning. And then for tomorrow, we'll see some clearing during the day and a high of +2. Again, -15 degrees currently at the Forks. And Abby will have a complete look at your Manitoba forecast coming up after the 6:30 news. Also coming up after 6:30, U.S. President Donald Trump has paused tariffs until April 2nd now on Canadian imports that comply with the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement on Trade. So what a roller coaster week it has been for the markets. We'll take a look at how those markets are wrapping up the week in our business report. Also, free games and apps that are profiling and tracking kids. CBC Marketplace looked into this, and we will bring you that story coming up after the news as well. I'm Margo Watt, sitting in for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio. We're on 89.3 FM. You can also watch us on YouTube this morning. And thanks for making us part of your day. Time now for the CBC News.
This is CBC News. I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg at 6:30. It's -15 degrees and clear at the airport. Sunny today with increasing cloudiness this afternoon, a high of -5. Tariff talk is taking its toll on many sectors in Manitoba. The potential impact of tariffs is a concern for Dan Shin, a professor of supply chain management at the University of Manitoba. He says Canada, the U.S., and Mexico have had a very complex and efficient supply chain, but tariffs could complicate that relationship.
We were just relying on each other's strength to cover our weaknesses and their weaknesses in that sense. But now we have to do something to take care of our weaknesses, and where we lack, we're going to have to do it ourselves, or we're going to have to pay up.
Shin says the push to buy Canadian goods could also impact the supply chain. He said it could be challenging for manufacturers to keep up with the demand, which could drive up prices. A private wine store in Winnipeg can't afford to stop selling its existing stock of U.S. products. The Porium on Portage Avenue says it has more than $250,000 of wines from south of the border. It's advertising them at a discount to get rid of current inventory because of the trade war. They're calling it a 25% reverse tariff. Co-owner Scott Holden says while they won't be bringing in any new U.S. wines, they have to keep cash flowing so they can pay to bring in bottles from other countries, including Canada.
What we have in terms of as being a small business owner now is that we actually have quite a bit of product in-house here that we've paid for that we can't just sit on.
Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries will keep American liquor off store shelves, even though the U.S. president has decided to delay his tariffs on some Canadian goods. A spokesperson from MBLL says it's keeping existing inventory rather than returning or destroying it. The Crown Corporation says it doesn't have figures to share on the financial impact of this move. Cuts to weather forecasting and climate science in the U.S. has Canadian scientists concerned. The Trump administration has cut 10% of the staff at U.S. National Weather Service and its parent organization. Scientists at the universities of Winnipeg and Manitoba say they're concerned about the reliability of U.S. weather and climate data. Canada needs this data to predict dangerous events like blizzards, thunderstorms, and floods. Jared Marquis is an atmospheric sciences professor at the University of North Dakota. He says the Grand Forks Weather Office was understaffed even before the cuts.
As you start decreasing the number of staff or increasing the stress on these staff, while they still have the same number of tasks to do, at some point something's going to have to break. Hopefully it's something that's not mission critical, something that's not going to affect lives.
A spokesperson for the National Weather Service in Maryland says the organization does not discuss internal personnel matters. A Roblin, Manitoba family is dealing with a double tragedy after a pair of deaths in Mexico last week. 78-year-old Marcel Gregoire and his 48-year-old daughter, Canine, were found dead Sunday inside their rented apartment in Mazatlan. Autopsies determined they died from two different medical conditions. Joël Gregoire flew to Mexico on Monday. He says his father and sister had ongoing health problems.
There's no suspicion from my part, based on what I know of their health and the way the autopsy came back. It's a weird coincidence that they both went down at the same time, but the findings weren't unexpected based on their health.
Compounding the tragedy, Gregoire's 80-year-old mother, Linda, spent 2 days alone in the apartment after her husband and daughter died. He says she's recovering in hospital from dehydration. Trains traveling between London and France were halted following the discovery of an old war bomb near some tracks. The unexploded World War II bomb caused the stoppage of Eurostar trains between the two countries. Officials with France's national train operator say that train traffic at the Gare du Nord would be stopped until mid-morning at the request of police. Finally, they snapped the skid. The Jets' top-ranked power play lived up to its name last night. After 3 losses, Winnipeg was able to chalk up a win against Philadelphia. Mark Scheifele opened the scoring in the first period before assisting on the next 2 goals, starting with this one by Ehlers.
Scheifele, now they'll work it back. Morrissey to Connor. Connor all the way across. Back to Sixman. It comes free to Ehlers, and he rams it home.
That courtesy of Sportsnet. Adam Lowry and Kyle Connor also scored for a 4-1 victory over the Flyers. Winnipeg became the first NHL team to reach 90 points this season. They visit New Jersey to play the Devils tonight. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
All right. Thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome.
As we head into this weekend, let's find out what the weather holds for us across Manitoba. Abby is with us. Hey, you.
Hey, good morning once again. Expect a mix of sun and clouds with some areas seeing light snow and temperatures feeling colder than the actual temperature, especially in the northern parts of the province for today and into tomorrow. But looking at conditions in the Red River Valley region, Winnipeg sitting at minus 14 at this time. We do have some cloudy conditions out there. It's going to start sunny sunny as you start your day. Then we'll see some clouds move in this afternoon. We do warm up to a high of -5 today. Tonight, expect mainly cloudy skies and a chance of flurries overnight. Temperatures will climb to about -3 by tomorrow morning. Similar conditions we are tracking in the Pembina Valley region for Modern Morris, Winkler, all the way down to Altona. We're seeing temperatures near -10. Cloudy skies also, but we will see a mix of sun and clouds for that part of the province as well. We do have that slim chance of light snow that you might feel in that part of the province. You warm up to around -1 today. We now take a trip to western Manitoba. Brandon is at -13 at this time. Mainly clear there. The day will stay mainly cloudy. We do have a chance of light snow this morning. Winds will be light. Then it's going to be shifting directions later in the day to some breezy conditions. Highs will be around -2. In the Parkland region, Dauphin and surrounding areas, we're seeing light snow there this time with temperatures around -22. Once the system moves away, you should see some sunny conditions. However, the clouds will move in later, and then that slight chance of snow will come back during your lunch break. Winds will be light, and the highs would get to -1. In the Interlake region, we are seeing clear conditions there, -20 at this time in Gimli and surrounding areas. Expect some sunny conditions. Some clouds will roll in later. Highs would get to -7, though with a wind chill this morning, it feels like -24. For the powerful influence surrounding areas, -15, we're tracking. Light snow falling at this time expected to stay with you this morning. We're looking at around 2 to 4 centimeters accumulation once the system goes through. Highs will be around -5. The wind chill feels like -24 this morning. Up in Thompson, good morning, folks. You are sitting at -29 at this time. Mainly clear skies you're enjoying. Expect a light snow this morning, and then some clouds will roll in. Highs will be around -9. The snow that would stay with you for most of the day will be tapering off, and then you deep to about you get to -17 later. Further north in Churchill, -20 you are at this time with light snow. Expect cloudy skies. The light snow is going to continue through the day into the evening period. We'll see temperatures dropping to around -27. Though with the wind chill this morning, it feels like -38 for folks in Churchill. So across board, it looks chilly in some parts of the province, mainly cloudy skies down south, light snow in the north, and then further north you go, you find out it's cold, especially tracking to Churchill and the Gillam area with temperatures around -20 and -28 at this time. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at -15, warming up to -5.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Chloe Friesen is on the commute for us this morning. Chloe.
Hello. Not much going on out there, Margot. It is still early, though, so hopefully things are going well. But if you do see something out there that is getting in your way, no matter where you are commuting in Manitoba, I know that I'm hitting some southern Manitoba highways for the weekend, so I would love an update on how those highways are looking. Let me know where you are, what you're seeing. That number is 204-788-3093.
And now we get a look at business with Crystalie Ramlakan. Good morning, Crystalie.
Hey, good morning, Margot.
How are you this Friday?
It's been a pretty crazy week in the business news. More to look forward to next week with, possible, tariffs on maybe steel and aluminum. But it's been a lot. But I'm happy to be here and to, let people know what's going on.
We're happy to have you here. And as you say, what a week it's been. Donald Trump paused tariffs until April 2nd now on Canadian imports that comply with the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement on Trade. So quite the roller coaster. How are the markets wrapping up the week?
Well, Canada's main stock index fell almost 300 points yesterday, and U.S. stock markets were also down. The Nasdaq led losses on Wall Street, and the experts say investors have been slowly rotating toward more defensive sectors for months after a couple of years of tech-fueled gains. But the uncertainty sparked by Trump appears to have kicked those moves into higher gear. But you know what? This volatility is possibly the new normal. So for more on that, here's Carl Shimada, who is the chief market strategist at Corpay.
The sheer uncertainty that has been unleashed by this tariff threat is going to stick with us for a very long time, despite the possibility that tariffs are ultimately lifted. The reality is that Canada's relationship with the United States has been badly shaken, and businesses, investors, and individuals are going to tread much more carefully in the months and the years ahead.
Now, later today, we will see new data on labor markets in Canada and the U.S. We're going to get the latest jobs numbers from StatsCan. And, heading into the year, the Canadian economy was weaker, prompting more rate cuts in Canada, while the U.S. economy had been surprisingly resilient under these higher interest rates. But in recent weeks, cracks have started to show in some of the U.S. data, and expectations for interest rate cuts this year have crept higher in both Canada and the U.S. And Margot, the Bank of Canada announces its next rate decision March 12th.
We'll keep an eye on that. The Japanese parent company of 7-Eleven is trying to fend off a takeover bid from a Canadian company, we hear. What are the details on this?
Yes, so 7&I Holdings has named a new CEO and says it plans to sell billions of dollars in assets to try to fight this takeover from Quebec company Alimentation Couche-Tard. So the new CEO was the board chairman and is the former head of Walmart in Japan. And this restructuring comes after the rejection of a takeover bid by Couche-Tard, which owns Circle K and other convenience chains. Now, the new CEO says the offer undervalued the potential of the convenience store business and failed to fully address U.S. regulatory concerns. So 7&I plans to sell some of its supermarkets and other retail stores. The company says it's also planning to go public by the end of next year. So the initial public offering will be of shares of its North American 7-Eleven operations. And that business, based in Texas, operates and franchises 13,000 stores in Canada and the U.S. And, the company plans to use the proceeds from the IPO and the sale of its other assets to fund share buybacks. So the company has about 86,000 7-Eleven stores worldwide, obviously, some there in Winnipeg as well. And the stores in Japan, they are known for their variety of food and actually have replaced many mom and pop shops there.
And a historic tobacco settlement has been approved. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, so this deal, calls for 3 major tobacco companies to pay out billions in compensation to provinces and territories, as well as former smokers across Canada. And it has, finally cleared its final legal hurdle, bringing this decades-long court saga to a close. So the Ontario Superior Court has approved the $32.5 billion plan. And this settlement was first proposed in October after years of mediation between the tobacco companies and their creditors. It includes plaintiffs in 2 Quebec class action lawsuits and provincial and territorial governments seeking to recoup smoking-related healthcare costs. So the case for the class action members actually began way back in the 1990s, so it's been going on for quite some time. And the plan calls for the companies to pay more than $24 billion to provinces and territories over about 2 decades. And the plaintiffs in the Quebec lawsuits will get more than $4 billion. Another $2.5 billion will go to compensate Canadian smokers not included in the lawsuits. And more than $1 billion will go to a foundation to fight tobacco-related illnesses and diseases.
And what's happening on the market so far this morning?
So in Europe, markets are broadly lower, rounding off a very volatile week. Germany is down, the UK is down, France is down. In Asia, markets are falling off. So Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all down. Oil is up 89 cents to $67.25 US per barrel. Gold is up $9.60 to $2,921.20 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 1/10 cent to 69.9 cents US.
Krista Lee, thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Margot.
Always a pleasure. That was Krista Lee Ramlakan with the Business News. It is 6:45 here at Information Radio, minus 15 degrees in Winnipeg. I'm Margot Watt, in for Marcy again today. If you're just joining us, welcome. With the on-again, off-again tariff war and other geopolitical factors going on, it can be an anxious time for people. Laura Kavanagh is a registered psychotherapist and a professor of psychology and behavioral sciences at Seneca College in Toronto. She explains now why you might be feeling more anxious this week.
You know, when you're already in an anxious state, you notice negative events more and you notice things that are worrisome more. So it does put you in a deeper anxiety spiral. And I would say, yes, sort of the long-term cumulative impact of living in uncertain or unsettled times certainly takes its toll. If you think about our stress response, it is an ancient response. So if you are a small dinosaur being chased by a T-Rex, the neurochemical cascade in your brain is the same that you experience today reading about, say, the imposition of tariffs or the stoppage of support for Ukraine or whatever it is, right? So our brain is really well designed to get into a fight, flight, freeze response, to deal with an immediate predator, to scan the environment and make an assessment about safety or danger. But it's really not well designed to stay in that state. And the longer we have to stay in that chronic stress state, the greater the impact on our physical health as well as our mental health. So I think the fact that, there was the global pandemic, when the election was gearing up, the American election, I heard and read a lot of, just in sort of professional journals in my field, about election anxiety and coping with election anxiety. And then usually, even when we get bad news, for example, news is helpful from a psychological perspective. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there was one study done with breast cancer survivors that said that most patients reported the worst time was waiting for bad news. So, the idea was sort of the election itself is a time of uncertainty, but after you experience certainty, whether it's what you want or not what you want, it's still, certainty. But that's not what happened, right? And now we've sort of continued to live in these uncertain times. Well, tariffs are happening. Well, no, they're not. Well, they're happening here, but they're not, and so I think we're being kept in this state of uncertainty, which from a psychological perspective is really, really distressing for us. Mm-hmm. Like I said, we cope with bad news better than we cope with uncertainty.
That's Laura Kavanagh. She's a professor of psychology and behavioral sciences at Seneca College in Toronto. How are Manitobans feeling about this on-again, off-again trade war with the U.S.? We sent CBC's Jim Agapito to find out. Stay with us. Just after 7, we'll hear what you had to say. Despite rules in place banning the collection and sharing of children's personal information, a marketplace investigation found popular free mobile games apps are profiling and tracking kids. CBC's Marketplace was able to trace a child's whereabouts in Toronto using location data for sale. Christine Birak joins us now to talk about it all. Good morning.
Good morning, Margot.
Christine, games are fun and can even be educational, but what's happening behind the scenes when kids use these apps?
Yeah, it's really hard to pull kids off of games. And as a parent, I feel it too. But here's what parents may not realize. These games are designed to be persuasive and keep players hooked. So all those bright colors, catchy sounds, changing characters, and never-ending goals trigger our brain's reward system, releasing feel-good chemicals. And really, who doesn't want to feel good? So it's hard for kids to put them down. To see some of this in action, I brought, or perhaps more accurately, dragged my son Noah to a research lab where neuroscientists monitored his brain activity while he played a free mobile game. And it was fascinating to see his brain activity just spike whenever he picked a character or an item that he wanted or won a match. It was clear these games are pressing real buttons, both in the game and in the brain. Now, experts say excessive gaming can interfere with kids' brains that are still developing cognitive controls like focus, attention, and problem-solving skills. Now, no one is saying kids shouldn't play games, but it is about limiting screen time to no more than 2 hours a day. And importantly, choosing kids' games wisely, which can actually be pretty tricky.
Yes, let's talk about data privacy. Parents often check age ratings before downloading games. What makes that tricky?
Yeah, most parents, even kids, see age ratings like E for everyone and assume the game is made for children too. But if you dig into the privacy policy, you may find different age restrictions. While the App Store might say the game's okay for all ages, the privacy policy might state it's for users 13 or even 16 and older. So why do these ages vary? It's because ratings focus on content, whether there's violence or the language is appropriate, which is decided by the App Store, while privacy policies cover what data is collected, and that comes from the developer. And in Canada, Margot, there aren't specific privacy laws for kids, so developers follow US or European standards. If a policy says kids under a certain age shouldn't play, it's often a sign the game is collecting and sharing user data. It's buried in the fine print. But once someone agrees to the terms and conditions, that's considered parental consent, and kids' data is then free game, so to speak. We spoke with Maude Bonifant. She's a Canada Research Chair in Gaming Technologies and Society. Here's how she sees that dynamic.
It's done intentionally. It's not a violation of the law, because it is written, if you look at that, at the term of use, it is written 13 and older. So if you consent, it's there, it's written. But I think it's misleading the parents. The parents don't understand.
And Margot, we found among the 20 most popular downloaded games in the app stores, about half have privacy policies stating kids should not play those games. But we also know the longer they do play those games, the more data games collect.
And what kind of data are they collecting and why?
A lot. It ranges from behavioral data, so how long they play, when they play, movements in the game, characters, items, rewards that they pick, to social data, such as their chat logs, friends, and interactions in the game, as well as personal details, email addresses, purchasing history, location data. So developers might use this to improve the game or communicate with players, but based on the privacy policy, it can also be shared or sold to advertisers and data brokers. And it can be used to build profiles on players, which advertisers use to target them with ads. So for kids, experts say this is especially concerning as they're more impressionable and less experienced in the world, let alone with evaluating ads. Have another listen to Maude Bonifant. She explains how profiling can impact kids long term. It can shape their decisions and even opportunities in life.
More than that, we can also have information about how he is behaving as a kid, teenager, eventually adult. So we have a profiling, really a long-term profiling of a person, and we can look at it when he will want to get a job.
Now, you tracked a child using this data. How invasive is it?
It's pretty shocking. So we posed as game developers and reached out to 4 data companies around the world. Each of them told us, as far as they know, there are no children under 16 in their data. Have a listen to how one of them described what they're selling.
Yeah, it's getting a little creepy, but it works, right? I mean, it's the nature of the beast with location data. It can feel like Big Brother, but realistically, it's companies are trying to make a buck. So that's what it is.
And they're making big bucks. Data brokers and companies in this space are part of a global industry worth, wait for it, $560 billion. That's how valuable our data is. A developer did send us location data for 700,000 devices. So that's mostly phones and tablets in East Toronto. And we quickly identified over 1,000 pings at elementary schools. Now, the data is seemingly anonymous, but it wasn't hard to track devices and know that where a phone or tablet sleeps is someone's home. And we were able to trace a specific child's movements, going to school at the same time every morning, standing at a bus stop, going to a convenience store, back home around 3 p.m. on school days for an entire month. And when we knocked on the family's door, they confirmed one of their kids takes a phone to school every day. They were equal parts confused, understandably, and just kind of stunned that someone could show up on their doorstep with so much information about their child.
So, Christine, what can parents do to protect their kids?
I think, first of all, know that it matters. Privacy is crucial for all of us, but especially for kids. You can turn off location services and tracking on devices and delete advertising IDs, which let companies track users across different apps. You can also use family-friendly sections in app stores to find games that really comply with privacy laws for kids. And most importantly, talk to your kids about the implications of just scrolling and accepting terms and conditions. Their privacy is valuable. It protects them from safety risks like identity theft and fraud and profiling that can affect them for years to come. And I'll just add, Margot, a lot of people feel like, well, that data is already gone. The horse is out of the barn. But when we talk to developers, they often said the most valuable data was the most recent data. So turning off location services and things like that, which you can always turn back on if you need them, is still really valuable.
Good to know. Christine, thanks so very much.
You're welcome.
CBC Marketplace host Christine Birak. For the full investigation, watch Gaming the System tonight at 7 p.m. Manitoba time. That's on CBC TV and CBC Gem. Right now, let's get the very latest from our CBC Winnipeg newsroom with Lauren Donnelly.
Good morning. Cuts to U.S. weather forecasting and climate science are creating dark clouds on this side of the border. Canadian scientists are worried about losing access to data needed to predict dangerous events. We'll hear more on the story from CBC's Bartley Kives. And the Winnipeg Folk Festival has announced the lineup for its 50th edition. We'll have some of the highlights coming up after World Report.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Still coming up on our show, we'll talk more about the Folk Festival, how they're celebrating the 50th edition of the festival. We'll take a look at the lineup, maybe play a little bit of music for you as well. So that's still to come here on the program. Traffic-wise, we're not hearing of any big problems this Friday morning, so that's nice. But if you do see something other drivers should know about, we welcome your calls at 204-788-3093. Currently sitting at minus 15 degrees in Winnipeg. We should start off the day with some sunshine and then see increasing cloud after lunch, a high of minus 5 for today. For tonight, cloudy, a good chance of flurries, temperature rising to minus 3 by morning. And then for tomorrow, we'll start off cloudy, we'll clear in the afternoon and see a high of plus 2. Again, minus 15 degrees right now here in Winnipeg. Still to come here on the program, American booze isn't flowing across the border, and data that informs our weather forecasts, flood forecasting, and climate science could be cut next. CBC reporter Bartley Kives will join us to talk about how those U.S. government cuts could affect our own science. That's coming up after the news at 7 o'clock. Also in the next hour of our program, how a Cree artist is celebrating the strength, wisdom, and resilience of Indigenous women in Manitoba through art. And this is ahead of International Women's Day. I'm Margo Watt, sitting in for Marcy Marcusa today. Pleasure to have your company here on Information Radio. You're listening to us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app. Maybe you're watching on YouTube. Wherever you are, it's great to have you with us. World Report is next.
On the Current.
Bob Ezrin has produced the music of everyone from Pink Floyd to Kiss. He's had a great career in the United States. Now he's moved back to Toronto from Nashville, saying this is the time to stand up for Canada. Bob Ezrin coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Whiplash, roller coaster, seesaw, call it what you will, the uncertainty Canadians are feeling over trade and tariffs continues.
You know, you can't make an investment decision if you don't know what the tax regime is, if you don't know what the tariff regime is.
Canada's ambassador to the UN, Bob Rae, appearing on MSNBC last night following news of a pause on the tariffs until April 2nd. Ottawa also pressing pause on increasing its tariffs as talks continue, but Canada's current tariffs on $30 billion worth of U.S. imports remain in place. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc also took Canada's message to Americans last night. He spoke on CNN.
I don't presume to imagine what the president or his administration have as their ultimate objectives. They made this decision, which we think is unfair and unwise. Canada's never going to be the 51st state.
The pause on tariffs is cold comfort to many industries in this country. It includes Canadian farmers. They don't know what will happen on April 2nd. Kubina Oduro has that story.
At Rotoma Dairy Farm just outside Montreal, owner Marcus Schnegg says any tariffs will affect his business in many different ways, primarily in getting parts. He estimates the $40,000 a year he typically pays for maintenance could go up to $65,000.
To produce the feed, we need fertilizer and seed. Most of the seed's produced in the United States, and some of the fertilizer comes from the States as well. And we export some fertilizer as Canadians too. So it's going to be both ways that's going to be affected.
Agriculture Canada says the two countries have one of the largest agricultural trading relationships in the world. In 2023, there was $73 billion worth of trade. Canadian farmers say maple syrup, pork production, and vegetables will be the first to be affected by tariffs. Quebec grain farmer Jeremy Letellier is bracing himself.
As far as grain is concerned, it's probably linked to the pork production. If pork production is so affected that the production goes down, then the demand for grain will go down as well. And you would probably see a negative adjustment as far as the local price is concerned.
Back at Rotoma Farm, Schnegg says when tariffs are implemented, he will be absorbing the cost, so consumers and employees are less affected.
Well, you know, we're going to postpone some investments as farmers because we're going to support the tariffs instead of investing into improving our businesses.
The farmers who are thinking about absorbing the cost say that's only a short-term solution. Kubino Duro, CBC News, Saint-Blaise-sur-Richelieu, Quebec.
With tax season around the corner, a CBC Fifth Estate investigation has uncovered some troubling details about the safety and security of your confidential Canada Revenue Agency accounts. Since 2020, there have been at least 31,000 security breaches at the CRA. The Fifth Estate investigates how scammers are using stolen identities to hack into people's accounts and steal tens of millions of dollars from the public purse. Mark Kelly reports.
How was my identity stolen in the first place? How did somebody get a hold of all this information?
We're calling him Paul, protecting his identity because he's the victim of identity theft and tax fraud. His ordeal began in 2023 when he learned someone had filed a tax return in his name and received a $10,000 refund. The CRA then contacted Paul.
They sent me a somewhat terrifying letter, and we'd like that money back by this date, or it's compounding interest from there on. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what now?
Our Fifth Estate investigation has revealed how scammers pose as tax filers, those third-party firms used by millions of Canadians to file their taxes for them. Filers have codes to get access to the CRA network. Scammers are obtaining and exploiting those codes to dupe the CRA into paying out fraudulent refunds. Vanessa Yafola is a forensic fraud investigator.
The fact that people can have accounts set up that are in their name, but they had absolutely no relation to setting up is wild. That's a real serious problem for the corporations that are allowing their accounts and their businesses to be used in this way.
The Canada Revenue Agency says it routinely prevents hundreds of thousands of attempts to hack into people's accounts. But for victims like Paul, the damage is done. Whoever stole his identity still has it, and tax season is right around the corner. Mark Kelly, CBC News, Toronto.
That story airs tonight at 9 p.m. on the Fifth Estate on CBC Television and GEM, or watch on YouTube starting at 1 p.m. Eastern. Another setback for Elon Musk's aerospace company.
Getting video down from the ship, you can see we've lost several engines and we've lost attitude control of the vehicle.
That's SpaceX Mission Control in Texas as a Starship rocket exploded last night, just moments after liftoff. Some of the debris scattered over vast areas of the Caribbean, forcing flights to be diverted in and around the Turks and Caicos Islands. It also led to delays at 4 Florida airports. This is the second time in less than 2 months that a SpaceX mega rocket has exploded during a test flight. At least 18 people are dead in overnight Russian attacks in Ukraine, including 4 children. Fire crews in Kharkiv doused the flames. Officials say Russia targeted Ukraine's energy and gas infrastructure in a large-scale missile and drone attack. The attack came hours after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said talks with the U.S. on ending the 3-year war will take place next week. With U.S. President Donald Trump pressuring NATO members to bolster defense spending, Canadian military officials are considering what the Army should look like in the future. The CBC's Murray Brewster files this report from Latvia, where Canadian soldiers are deployed.
A troop of Canadian Leopard 2 main battle tanks churning up the mud at the Adaji training range in Latvia. Soldiers practicing to defend this Baltic nation, but also trying to learn the brutal lessons of the war in Ukraine, where cheap, tiny, explosive-laden drones are taking up multi-million-dollar tanks.
The Army we have now is not the Army that we need for the future.
Lieutenant General Mike Wright is the commander of the Canadian Army, who has ordered a team to begin looking at what the Army needs to fight in the future, and how it should be structured in an age where recruiting challenges have left the ranks depleted by as many as 5,000 troops. All of this is taking place against a political backdrop of rising tension between Canada and the U.S., where President Donald Trump has threatened to annex Canada through economic force and possibly Greenland through military action.
I'm not even going to imagine the unimaginable.
Wright says relations with the U.S. military remain strong and normal. He says his biggest challenge is equipment and untangling the bureaucracy. For example, Leopard tanks on exercise here face a routine shortage of spare parts, components that are manufactured in Europe, but have to make their way to Canada before being shipped to the Army in Latvia. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Camp Adaji, Latvia.
The ongoing drama with our southern neighbors is taking its toll on the minds of Canadians, and psychologists say their advice can only do so much. Campbell McDermott has more.
Never a Trumper!
Protesters outside the U.S. Embassy in Ottawa expressing their fears and anxieties about Trump's threatened tariffs, his withholding of support for Ukraine, and the 51st state jibes. Krista Bayless worries for her children.
Mostly anxiety for my kids' future.
For Louisa Fenner, it's finances.
So I'm frightened about the economic impact.
Steve Whitwell worries it could come to a war.
Yeah, it keeps me awake at night.
They're not alone. Mental health professionals say Trump anxiety is surging across Canada. Heather Anderson is a psychologist in Ottawa.
There's a huge spike in the fear, the anxiety that the clients are presenting, that this is not the occasional person that is experiencing this. This is across the board.
Psychologist Jordan Alley is also hearing more about Trump.
Definitely people of all ages, all walks of life, and for various reasons, but they all seem to be flagging this as being a major concern for them, yeah.
Dr. Alley says he can't always assuage these fears, but that listening can help.
Just to know that they're not alone in experiencing those things, and also that they're not necessarily off the mark for experiencing some of those fears.
Psychologists say there is no single solution to Trump anxiety and offer a variety of advice: exercise, mindfulness, spending time with loved ones, pets, or in nature, and check in with yourself before checking the news online. Campbell McDermott, CBC News, Ottawa.
But all of this is providing ample fodder for U.S. late-night hosts.
Canada's in full-on defense mode right now. In response to the tariffs, many Canadian stores are pulling American-made liquor off their shelves. That's all liquor from the United States. It's all gone. And this is a painstaking process for Canadians because they apologize to each bottle as they remove it.
Jimmy Kimmel, but he wasn't the only one.
Say what you want about the tariffs, but no one has suffered more than the guy who owns a combination Taco Bell, Tim Hortons, Panda Express. That guy, imagine the odds. That is terrible.
Jimmy Fallon also cracking jokes on his late-night show. Well, that is the latest national, international, and late-night talk show host news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube. I'm Margot Watt, sitting in for Marcy Marcusa. Coming up this hour on the program, tariff anxiety. How are Manitobans feeling about this on-again, off-again trade war with the U.S.? We'll hear what you had to say. Tomorrow is International Women's Day. Coming up, we'll speak with a Winnipeg Cree artist who created an art piece dedicated to uplifting Indigenous women and returning Indigenous remains to the community. And Manitoba weather and flood forecasts may get a little more hazy in the future, and that's because of U.S. government cuts. We'll have CBC's Bartley Kivas here to explain why. This is Information Radio on CBC. With the very latest from our CBC newsroom, here's Lauren Donnelly.
Good morning. A Roblin, Manitoba family is dealing with a double tragedy after a pair of deaths in Mexico last week. 78-year-old Marcel Gregoire and his 48-year-old daughter, Canine, were found dead Sunday inside their rented apartment in Mazatlan. Autopsies determined they died from two different medical conditions. We'll have more on that story. And talk of punishing tariffs from the U.S. is keeping Canadians guessing. One U of M expert says while this country has enjoyed a complex and efficient supply chain with the U.S. and Mexico, tariffs will complicate that, and Canada must address weaknesses in the system. Your next local news is at 7:30.
Thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome.
The very latest on our forecast here for Winnipeg, what we can expect for today and heading into the weekend. Abby is back with us. Hey, Abby.
Good morning once again. We're looking at a mix of sunny skies and cloudy conditions across the province today, with temperatures ranging from the south to the north. If we look at conditions in Winnipeg and surrounding areas, minus 14, 15 we're seeing at this point, mostly cloudy conditions. We get this bright that the sun is going to be sneaking in, but then the clouds would make a comeback in the afternoon period. Light breeze warming up to minus 5 tonight, mostly cloudy. We do have this chance of some flurries late in the evening into the overnight period with some light winds, and then we'll see the temperatures warming up a bit around minus 3 by tomorrow morning. But across board, we're looking at cloudy skies. The sun kicks off the day, and then the clouds will be taking over later. We do have that few flakes to fall tonight, and then tomorrow starts cloudy before it brightens up. But right now, minus 15 in the city.
Thank you, Abby. Looking at traffic this morning as we head into work to end this work week, or hopefully it's the end of your work week. Maybe it's the beginning. I'm sorry for that. Chloe is watching regardless.
I am watching regardless, and I am not seeing a whole lot. So I am relying on you here. If you are in your car, maybe you're biking, however you get around the city or anywhere in Manitoba, if you see something that is slowing you down, or you see something that you think your fellow commuters should know about this morning, let us know. We'll share that information. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
First, the tariffs are on, and then they're off. It's enough to cause confusion and chaos for Canadian businesses. Yesterday, U.S. President Donald Trump said he will again pause some of his tariffs against Canada until April 2nd. But the messaging it's sending to Canadians can be emotional as well. Despite the ongoing trade war, is there some silver lining to all of this? CBC's Jim Agapito asked Manitobans how they're feeling.
My name is Ethan Rowe.
Okay, Ethan, I got to ask, in one word, how would you describe the current trade war with the United States?
Confusing.
Why do you say that?
It feels very on and off. It feels slightly sometimes like bully tactics, and then other times it feels like it might become something more.
Kayla Talabas, awful. Or I obviously think the tariffs from the U.S. are bad, but I think Canada's response to it is necessary.
Lillian Wins. It's troublesome for a bunch of people.
Hello, my name's Ahmed Samir.
It's quite uncertain in my eyes, but I feel like the measures being taken by the Canadian government are going in the right direction, and I think that we should see positive outcomes over the long term for this country.
Neiman McLeod.
So you think about the tariffs. At first, the United States proceeds with some tariffs, then they announce that they're not, and then they could be implemented later. I'm wondering, how do you feel about that messaging?
I mean, I see online people say like Trump's kind of backing off and stuff, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Trump really knows what he's doing, so I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
I think it just makes like the U.S. look a little bit like a little bad because they're just like kind of indecisive and they're like, well, we're gonna do this and then maybe not doing this. It also kind of makes them look like maybe it's like an empty threat at this point if they keep pushing them back.
Like I said, it feels like bully tactics. It feels like they're gonna try to hold it over us, hover over us. It's happening, it's not happening. It just feels like a bully tactic to me.
And I think that's, well, not only the one part of the problem is that you don't know what is going to happen, so there is a lot of uncertainty.
Speaking more generally, aside from the tariffs, it's really hard to trust the U.S. as a partner in any sense because I feel like their messaging is all over the place and it's really hard to understand what they want to do. It always feels like there's a hidden agenda you can't really, understand. So, yeah.
How do you feel about Canada's response to this?
I think they're doing what they can, right, without being too forward, because you need to keep some sort of politeness with all that. And so I think so far they have been fairly straightforward with it, which is good.
I think it's been strong. I think, especially in Manitoba, Wab Canoe has been very, very vocal about supporting local businesses, staying strong in Canada, being proactive, having responses. I think, we stay strong, we stay proactive, we think about what we can do locally, provincially, and ultimately that'll help us be a stronger country.
Despite all of this, do you see any upside to these tariffs?
Not too many. What I can see is that Canada seems to be more united than people thought before. So that's a good thing for the country, though.
So you're seeing that patriotism and whatnot?
Yes, to some extent, I think that's good.
I think like people are looking to invest more locally and shop more locally, and I think that's always good. So I think that's kind of like a benefit.
I guess people seem a little more patriotic, a little more kind of just pro-Canada, I know like my family, we're all trying to buy more Canadian stuff. We just had a talk about that. We had a family dinner. And that was one of the main things, definitely.
I think that there is potentially an upside with local businesses seeing more business and having more support. I think that it makes people a little bit more educated on where they can shop locally, provincially, how they can support smaller locally owned businesses. I think that it's unfortunate that that's what it takes to get us there, but if it can get more business to more smaller owned mom and pop shops, then I think that's slightly an upside.
It's hard for me to really understand the benefits of this war, unless you're speaking from an American perspective, then that's another question.
And that was CBC's Jim Agapito asking Manitobans how they feel about the on-again, off-again tariff war with the United States.
The Music Class Challenge, presented by Music Counts, is back. And for the first time, there's a spring edition. Music educators across the country pick a song from our list, create a cover version, and upload a video of your class performing the cover. Amazing prizes are up for grabs, including $30,000 worth of new musical instruments. Check out all the details and register now at cbc.ca/musicclass.
Manitobans' most talented women and gender-diverse artists have joined forces to produce a new album. It's a collection of iconic Manitoba songs reinterpreted by local artists in celebration of our province's history and its future. It's called Her 204, Stories of One Great City Revisited. We'll be hearing live performances from the album later today on Up to Speed. Here's a bit of a preview for you. This is Rhonda Head with a cover of Sundancer by Eagle and Hawk.
Are you a dancer in this world? Do you walk the sun dance of life? And all you wanted was to be free. What I wanted was to be me, and it's hard, but you said it, and you meant it, but would you keep on going? Sundancer, carry the weight on your shoulders, on your shoulders. They say we're all the same in this world, like red is red and white is white. And all you wanted was to be near. And I close my eyes to you, to you. Sundancer, carry the weight on your shoulders, on your shoulders. Are you a dancer in this world? Do you walk the sun dance of life, of life? Sundancer, carry the weight on your shoulders, on your shoulders. Sundancer, carry the weight on your shoulders, on your shoulders.
And there is a beautiful version of Eagle and Hawk Sundancer. That is by Rhonda Head. You can join us later today on Up to Speed as we celebrate the history of music in our province with a special program featuring live performances by Kelly Badeau and Andrina Turin. It is 7:24, and let's check out CBC Sports with Paul McGowan. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Margot.
Let's start at the Briar, where it was a heavyweight tilt to decide first place in Pool A.
That's right. Throwing Yellowstones, the three-time defending champion Brad Gushue and Team Canada, and throwing Redstones, the number one ranked team in the country, Winnipeg's Matt Dunstone. And early on, it looked like this was going to go Gushue's way. Held a 4-1 lead early, but Dunstone able to convert a deuce heading into the break. That proved to be a bit of a turning point. Saw an uncharacteristic mistake from Gushue combined with key shot making from Dunstone, and the Winnipegger came out on top 7-6 the final. Dunstone says that his team was built for games like this against tough opponents.
So many ebbs and flows in that game, some exciting moments both ways, and really happy for this team. We're crunch time. We know what's on the line. When we get a second life and a chance at the 1-2 game, and lose that game, we got to win 4 straight, I think, to win the Brier against a bunch of great teams. So it's such a huge difference, and nice to get our Manitoba counterparts in the playoffs there too.
Yeah, by virtue of the win, fellow Winnipegger Reed Carruthers also gets into the playoffs. Next up for Dunstone, a matchup with a former Manitoba skip, Mike McEwen. The winner advances, the loser plays Carruthers to try and stay alive. 2:30 start time for Dunstone McEwen.
And don't you love the fact that Dunstone, he has the word stone in his name? So you have to be a curler in Manitoba, right?
You have to be.
To smoother ice now, where the Winnipeg Jets finally saw their offense wake up.
Yeah, since returning from the Four Nations break, the Jets were averaging only about 2 goals per game. The power play, which had been so good, scored only twice in 6 games. Both of those things changed last night against Philadelphia. A 4-1 victory that saw the power play strike twice. Goalie Eric Comrie also had a great night. Stopped all but 1 Flyer shot. He says that he never doubted the team's offense.
I face it every day in practice, so I see that's pretty good. They can score in practice. I'm like, they can score in our PK. I know they can score in any PK unit in the league, and I think they're really good. We do score a lot of goals. I know we had a couple times where we haven't scored, but we do score a lot of goals. I mean, it's just a lot of fun playing with these guys. These guys are awesome. We play hard every single night. I think our coaching staff does a great job of making sure we do the right things, and I think we played a pretty good game tonight, I'd say.
Big backup goalie energy from Eric Comrie, just pumping up the rest of the team. Jets back in action tonight against the Devils. That, of course, takes place after the trade deadline, and we did see the Jets make a deal last night, a smaller one. They trade Capo Kakinen for Winnipeg native Chris Drieger. Drieger, a very solid backup. Nice to have some goaltending insurance heading into the playoffs. We'll see if the Jets make any other moves before the 2 p.m. deadline.
All right. And let's finish on tennis and what is being called a defining moment for women's sport.
This is the Women's Tennis Association announcing a paid 12-month maternity leave program. Now, other sports leagues do have paid parental leave, but tennis, unique in that it's an individual sport where athletes don't have the support of a club team. Here's Swiss star Belinda Bencic on what the program will mean to players.
It gives the opportunity to all the players to not have to choose between and kind of wait until they can finish their career. And obviously, us players are super proud of the WTA. It's also the first sport that is doing that. So I hope we can lead in that way and pave the way for maybe other sports as well, because in other sports, I think the athletes have the same dilemma, trying to have a family and finishing their careers.
Not having to choose between a career and family is fantastic. It does bear saying that this program is being funded by the Saudi Public Investment Fund, which has a partnership with the WTA. And so, yes, this is a significant amount of money being paid to women, but it is being paid by a country with a human rights record that is questionable at best. Still, for the 300 or so players on the WTA who are eligible for this maternity leave, some very welcome news.
And I did enjoy your comment about the goalie when you're talking about the Jets game. What did you say? Big backup energy?
Big backup goalie energy, yeah, exactly.
I'm going to carry that with me today because I'm backing up for Marcy today. So I'm going to have that big backup energy throughout this day. Excellent.
It's a good thing to work with.
It is. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Margot.
Paul McGowan with CBC Sports.
Here's to the bold. The Professional Women's Hockey League is back. Lace up, strap in, and tune in to Hockey Saturdays on CBC, where you can catch the best women's hockey players competing head-to-head with everything they've got. The puck drops Saturdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on CBC, CBC Gem, and CBCSports.ca. Don't miss it.
It is minus 15 degrees in Winnipeg. We'll have some sunshine to start off this day and then increasing cloud throughout the afternoon. High of minus 5 for today. For tonight, a chance of some flurries again, just like we saw last night. Tomorrow, cloudy to start the day and then clearing later in the afternoon. A high of plus 2. After the 7:30 news, we'll have a complete look at the Manitoba forecast, see what's in store across the province weather-wise for this weekend. So that's still to come. Also after 7:30, how a Cree artist is celebrating the strength, wisdom, and resilience of Indigenous women in Manitoba through art. This is just ahead of International Women's Day. So that's to come after 7:30. And also, as you may have been hearing on CBC News today, we are hearing about the lineup being unveiled for the Winnipeg Folk Festival. This year, the festival is celebrating its 50th edition, so a very important festival this year. We'll be talking with organizers of the festival and previewing some of the great music we'll be hearing, and we'll do that on the program after 8 o'clock. I'm Marga Watt in for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC. It's 7:30.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's minus 15 degrees, mainly sunny at the airport. Sunny today with increasing cloudiness this afternoon, a high of minus 5. Cuts to U.S. weather forecasting and climate science are creating dark clouds on this side of the border. As CBC's Bartley Kivez reports, Canadian scientists are worried about losing access to data needed to predict dangerous events.
After ordering U.S. climate scientists to stop talking to their Canadian counterparts, the Trump administration started cutting more than 1,000 jobs, or 10% of the workforce, from the U.S. National Weather Service and its parent organization. Climatologist Danny Blair, the co-director of the Prairie Climate Center, calls the cuts astonishing. He says reducing the ability to predict blizzards, tornadoes, and thunderstorms will put people in harm's way, and not just in the U.S. Jared Marquis is an atmospheric sciences professor at the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks.
Weather doesn't understand boundaries. Weather crosses boundaries all the time.
Environment Canada relies on U.S. weather data, so do Manitoba flood forecasters. Hydrologist Jay During is a professor emeritus of civil engineering at the U of M.
85% of the Red Rivers basin lies south of the border. So for that, we need U.S. data.
The National Weather Service declined to comment on what it described as internal personnel matters. Bartley Kivez, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Tariff talk is also taking its toll on many sectors in Manitoba. Businesses in the province are concerned about the increased cost tariffs could bring. But tariffs aren't a huge concern for Ryan Gauvin, owner of Tiny Monster Garden. He sells seeds to local farms in Manitoba and says his business hasn't been negatively affected.
First started hearing about the threats of tariffs earlier this year, I saw a definite spike in my sales. Probably a lot like the COVID pandemic, people see the looming threat of volatile food prices, and they think, well, how can we mitigate the effects of this on our family? And starting your own garden is one way to do that.
Gauvin said the tariffs are going to affect a lot of his peers in the agriculture industry, but hopes this disruption will spark some positive change of how our food system operates. A Winnipeg grocery store owner says U.S. products will remain on his shelves unless customers stop buying them. Food fair owner Munther Zaid says some produce is hard to get from other countries during certain times of the year. While provincially run liquor marts have removed U.S. booze, he says it's not feasible for him to follow suit with food.
Store owners, like grocery stores, to take off all the U.S. products off the shelf, that's already paid for. I mean, what do you do with that? Throw it out?
While he hasn't noticed a big price impact yet, Zaid says Canadian counter tariffs could drive up costs. Business owners say the back and forth tariff battle and the uncertainty is causing them a lot of unnecessary stress. A Roblin, Manitoba family is reeling after two of its members died suddenly in Mexico last week. 78-year-old Marcel Gregoire and his 48-year-old daughter, Canine, were found dead inside their rented apartment in Mazatlan. Autopsy results determined they died from two different medical conditions. Joël Gregoire flew to Mexico on Monday after hearing the news about his father and sister.
First couple of days down here were so busy trying to run around to district attorney and funeral home and consulate and everything. So it was good in a way that I wasn't didn't have time to process or whatever. But yeah, it's a struggle.
Gregoire's 80-year-old mother, Linda, spent a couple of days alone in the apartment after her husband and daughter died. He says she's recovering in hospital from dehydration. It was a win for the Jets last night. Winnipeg played the Flyers in Philadelphia. Mark Scheifele and Nikolai Ehlers netted the first 2 goals of the night, and Kyle Connor broke his scoring slump, expanding Winnipeg's lead to 3-0 in the second period.
Right wing feed, he's got Connor flying up the wing. The shot, and he scores!
That courtesy of Sportsnet. Winnipeg's 4-1 victory was their first after 3 losses. They play the Devils in New Jersey tonight. Finally, half a century of music, dancing, and tarps. The Winnipeg Folk Festival has announced the lineup for its 50th edition. 68 artists will take to stages in Birds Hill Provincial Park this summer, bringing a wide range of music genres with them, from gospel to funk, rock, and, of course, folk. Blues Hall of Famer Mavis Staples will make her Winnipeg Folk Fest debut, so will Gillian Welch and David Rawlings, while Grammy Award-winning Ani DeFranco and Jason Isbell will return. Homegrown talent on the bill includes children's entertainer Fred Penner and pop singer-songwriter Begonia. The festival runs from July 10th to 13th. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
All right. Thanks very much, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Lauren Donnelly in for Heather Wells this morning at CBC News. Right now, let's take a look at the Manitoba forecast as we head into the weekend. Abby's here this year.
Good morning. Once again, let's look at the regions. The province will be seeing a mix of sunny skies and some cloudy conditions with temperatures ranging from chilly in the northern part of the province. And as you track that down, you see some milder temperatures down south. For Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region, we're seeing temperatures hover near -14, -15 in most of the regions. Expect a sunny start. However, the clouds will move in sometime in the afternoon. We then warm up to around -5 later in the day. Tonight, mostly cloudy conditions will continue. We do have that a slight chance of flurries in the forecast before temperature would be rising to around -3 by tomorrow morning. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region, temps around -10 in Modern Winkler, Altona, all the way down to the U.S. border. A mix of sun and clouds in the forecast. A slim chance of light snow this morning. Expect highs near -1. Heading west to Brandon, we're seeing temperatures around -14 in the region. Expect mainly cloudy conditions today with a slight chance of light snow in the forecast. Highs would reach -2. Tonight, the skies will clear, and then you see the lows around -7. In Dauphin and the Parkland region, we're looking at temperatures around -23 in Dauphin at this time. Sunny skies ahead, although the clouds will be rolling in later. Highs will be around -1. In Gimli, good morning. You are at -20 at this time. For the Interlake region, sunny skies to start. The clouds will roll in this afternoon. It will warm up to a high of -7 later today. Now, from the central regions tracking into the Pan, the Flin-Flon surrounding areas, temps hovering near -15 at this time with cloudy conditions. Snow is expected. Once that system comes in and sweeps through the region, you should be seeing about 2 to 4 centimeters of snow. Expect highs around -5. Now, heading into the northern regions, currently -28 in Thompson. Mostly cloudy conditions we're seeing. Expect light snow today, high around -9. It will feel much colder when the wind chill factored in. Further north in Churchill, -19 and cloudy. Light snow also expected throughout the day. Highs will be around -15. And then this light snow continues into the overnight period. You'd see your temperatures get to -27. With the wind chill factored in, it's going to feel like -38 today. So from Winnipeg to the northern part of the province, the weather will vary with sunny conditions in the southern part of the province and snow in some parts of the Parkland region, into the Interlake region, into the central parts of the province, and then cold and snow conditions in the north. But Winnipeg today, it's going to be milder compared to the colder weather we're seeing up north. Right now, it is -15 in Winnipeg, and we're warming up to -5.
All right, Abby, thanks very much. With a look at traffic now, Chloe's back.
Hello, I don't have a lot to look at, Margot. No calls so far to the commuter line. I'm not seeing anything on any maps or anything from Winnipeg's traffic management center. So if you do spot something out there that you think your fellow commuter should know about, give us a call at 204-788-3093.
All right, Chloe, thanks so much. As we head into International Women's Day tomorrow here on Treaty 1 territory, we're going to speak with a young Cree student. It's a story that started 10 years ago when she heard about the remains of indigenous ancestral remains and artifacts being held in the Anthropology department. Fast forward years later, and she is now working as an assistant teacher and a master's student. Her name is Savannah Moon. She played a big role in the process of rematriating the remains of indigenous ancestors. The University of Manitoba made a public apology last summer and asked her to be one of the people to make a speech. That speech turned into an art piece that is now displayed in the Anthropology building. And it's a pleasure to have Savannah Moon with us this morning. Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks so much for having me.
Could you describe what your piece of art looks like?
It's basically a 4 by 6 foot cedar. I like to call it a plaque. And it's basically a piece that was inspired by a statement that I made during the University of Manitoba's public apology about the ancestors that were being held there. And I hand burned my statement into the piece. And it's now hanging up in the 4th floor of the Fletcher Argue building. And it's got my words in it, and it's got strawberries on the side of it. It's got little green vines kind of edging around the piece, and it's got little strawberry flowers on it as well.
It is just beautiful and very powerful. I was watching a video of it this morning, and one of the statements that jumped out at me, it says, "Our fears for the future only become true if we do not try." Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it kind of says it all, right? It's not nothing's going to happen if we don't do anything, right? So I think that came from a place where I was talking about how the university, I felt that they were perhaps not as engaged with these issues as I was hoping that they might be. And a lot of that came from fear. And people thought that maybe if these issues were approached that they would be explosive or divisive, and that's not really the case. We can approach those fears with love and with action, and with that we can bring our ancestors home, which is what the piece at the bottom says.
This has been years in the making for you. What's that journey been like?
It's kind of interesting because it's years in the making in the sense that it's taking me a lifetime of experience to get to this piece. But when I was actually creating the piece, it only took me about 2 weeks, which only, right? It took me about 2 weeks to actually sit down and hand burn all of the words into there and to kind of artistically visualize what it would be like. And I got a lot of help from a lot of other people in order to help me make that piece. So, yeah.
What was it like for you when you first heard the rumor about remains at the university? What was that time like?
I was 18 years old, and it was 2013, and it was my very first semester on campus. And so I'm from the country, and the city was a big culture shock to me. And so I guess in my mind, I kind of had this idea that, once I go to the city and the university, things will be a little more progressive. And my Indigenous identity was not something that I was embracing at the time. And so to go onto campus and have that be one of the very first things that I heard, it was very uncomfortable. And yet at the time, when you think of the context of 2013, that was also just kind of par for the course, right? Those were the kinds of attitudes that were held at the time. And so it was kind of like, oh, that sucks, but I got to go on with my day. But it was something that definitely did have a profound impact on me, where I knew that I was entering an institution and a class where those ideas that I hoped that would be addressed or spoken about were kind of the exact same that I had experienced growing up, and it wasn't what I had hoped for.
Mm-hmm. What is it like for you now when you see your plaque up there?
Really interesting, because I guess I never considered myself an artist in a professional sense. And I also never thought that I would have the opportunity to create art and to do it for my school. And that's just amazing. And so now I know that, you know, when I had gone into those spaces on the 4th floor before, that it was not a very welcoming place. And now that I see my piece, it's a little weird because it's not something that I'm used to seeing up there,
Right.
but it's really nice. And it does change the space.
I bet it does.
Yeah.
It feels completely different, I imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. It feels a lot more welcoming and open, and there's something beautiful in there now.
What is it like for you watching other people look at it and read it?
Also very interesting. I feel a little bit like a wallflower, because they probably aren't aware that I'm the artist, right? And it's kind of nice. It's really nice to see other people looking at it, and whether they're just admiring it visually or they're actually sitting there and contemplating the words. It's really lovely to see other people appreciating something that you worked so hard to make.
And what reaction are you getting from people?
Really, really positive responses, which is really great, because it's hard to put yourself out there, especially when you're putting yourself out there on something that's 4 by 6 feet, right?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of really beautiful, positive responses. People were just telling me, oh, the artwork is beautiful. Your statement was really powerful. And so it was really great to see that up on the wall. And my favorite comment was by a professor who happened to be walking by, and he just stared at it and admired it. And he just said, wow, what a triumph. That was beautiful.
Very beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So ahead of International Women's Day, what will your thoughts and reflections be this weekend?
Oh, gosh, I'm not sure. I think after all the work that I put into that plaque, I think I'll just be sleeping.
Fair enough.
I did it a few months ago, and I feel like sometimes I'm still catching up on sleep from that.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah,
I bet.
yeah.
Well, it's a lovely work. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so much.
sharing your story with us. And I'm going to mention, if people have been hearing a bit of jingling, that Savannah has the world's most beautiful earrings on. So that's what you've been hearing, if you're wondering. Savannah, thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Savannah Moon is an anthropology master's student at the University of Manitoba, and she is also an artist.
I'm here and still waiting. I'm here and waiting for you. I'm here and
There's a new song from Alicia Cayley called New Beginnings. It is 7:49. You're with Information Radio here at CBC. I'm Marco Watt, sitting in for Marcy this morning. Hundreds of employees have been cut from the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA. Those cuts include meteorologists with the National Weather Service, and that could have big impacts here in Canada when it comes to weather forecasts, flood projections, and broader changes to climate science. CBC reporter Bartley Kivas has been looking into this and joins us now. Good morning, Bartley.
Good morning.
So what do we know about these cuts at NOAA?
So these cuts are nationwide. If you've been paying attention to U.S. news in the last couple of months, you know there have been a lot of cuts to the civil service. And the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and its various bodies, which include the National Weather Service, with people hear about, here when we see flood forecasts and sometimes weather warnings from below the border.
Right.
And it has been subject to a hiring freeze since approximately the U.S. Inauguration Day. And then there was an order in February for some of the climate scientists to stop communicating with their Canadian counterparts unless they were authorized ahead of time. And then cuts, as many, according to the Associated Press, a round of 500, another round of 800. And these are cuts to various levels, various functions all around the United States. Now, we know that there was at least one cut is going to be pending at the Grand Forks office, but mostly it maintains this hiring freeze, which causes, according to a University of North Dakota professor that we'll hear from in a little bit, says it's already been so acute that they've had forecasts and weather warnings issued out of Grand Forks by people as far away as Kansas.
Now, how does the U.S. National Weather Service help us here in Canada?
Well, weather moves across borders, but
Yes.
mostly the Americans, they have a lot more instrumentation than we do. They have more satellites. They have a lot more data monitoring, and they have a lot of data subsets, plus they know local information. So, for example, where they have large high-altitude atmospheric monitoring that Canada does not, how the air moves, several kilometers above the ground is very different from how it sends down here. They have more satellites. And also when it comes to flood forecasting, they know the conditions that exist around the Red River Valley in much greater detail than we do. And a lot of factors go into floods. Things like soil moisture condition and snow accumulation, the level of streams and creeks at freeze up. All these things factor in. Now, we have a general sense of what goes on south of the border, but a lot of the flow from the United States comes up here. So this is important information for flood forecasting. It's important information for weather forecasting and the prediction of dangerous weather events, tornadoes, blizzards, thunderstorms, and as well, it's important for climate science in general, not the study of the weather or the looking at the weather, but looking at how things are changing over time. So environmental monitoring. And there is the potential movement of a large forecasting center out in Maryland that does a lot of their big models, and also the potential loss of access to data here if their scientists can't communicate with scientists up here.
And what could be the impact of that if we don't have all of that information?
It's real simple, less accurate forecasting. I mean, if it's an Alberta clipper moving south, we don't necessarily need that information. But if it's a Colorado low moving our way, more accurate information from them does allow people at Environment and Climate Change Canada and private sector meteorologists up here to make the most accurate projections they can with the information they have. And needless to say, we do kind of value their flood data as well.
Yes, we do. What have the NOAA cuts meant for North Dakota?
Well, as I mentioned, there's only an individual that is slated to lose their gig in the Grand Forks office, according to a UND professor. And what is effectively happening here is they're stuck kind of at this hiring freeze, which really predated even the inauguration of U.S. President Donald Trump. I spoke to Jared Marquis, and he is a atmospheric sciences professor at the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks. He works closely with the U.S. National Weather Office in Grand Forks. And here's what he had to say about operating a weather office with fewer staff.
As you start decreasing the number of staff or increasing the stress on these staff while they still have the same number of tasks to do, at some point something's going to have to break. Hopefully it's something that's not mission critical, something that's not going to affect lives, but something will have to break at some point.
Now, I also spoke to the head, or the co-director rather, of the Prairie Climate Center here in Winnipeg, and he said that he called these cuts astonishing and discouraging, if not surprising, and said that this definitely places people at risk, at harm's way, in his words. It's Danny Blair at the U of W. If these staffing levels may stay at the same level they are right now.
And you also spoke with Jay During, a U of M professor emeritus and a Manitoba flood expert we've talked to many times over the years. What does he say about flood forecasting in particular?
Well, he just points out the obvious, that there is a lot of the Red River's flow that starts not here, but down south of the border.
85% of the Red River's basin lies south of the border. So for that, we need U.S. data, and that data tends to come from two sources, which basically both fall under the umbrella of NOAA. So if you don't have that data, how does this impact our ability to determine what the soil moisture is, what the future weather outlook is, or what the snow water equivalent is in the basin, Red River Basin lying south of the border?
So, Bartley, what do we know about the 2025 flood season so far?
Okay, well, that's non-disturbing news today, because really it's kind of a relative nothing burger given what we are used to up here. Minor, moderate flooding chance depending on how the weather is, but the Red River in particular is expected to stay within its banks and below flood protection levels throughout its basin. Some minor flooding and overland flooding, and maybe in some smaller creeks, that sort of thing. But really, for what we are used to here, not a big season. Things can change if there's, we're heading into that 1 month period, mid-March to mid-April, when you can get blizzards. But even those models factor in very unusual weather. It would take a string of massive blizzards here on in to really change that outlook right now.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you, Bartley.
You're more than welcome.
Bartley Kivas is a reporter here with CBC Manitoba. Right now, let's get the very latest from our Winnipeg newsroom with Lauren Donnelly.
Good morning. The union representing 7,000 healthcare workers in the province says a strike has been postponed. A representative from the Manitoba Association of Healthcare Professionals says a tentative agreement has been reached and confirms that its members should go to work as normal today. MAHCP represents paramedics, physiotherapists, social workers, and lab techs. And with his tariff threats, U.S. President Donald Trump has plunged Canadian industries into uncertainty. We'll hear from local businesses about how the on-again, off-again levies are affecting them. That's all coming up after World Report.
All right. Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks.
Traffic-wise, we're not hearing of any major issues this Friday morning, so that's good. If you do have any notes from the road, we do welcome your calls at 204-788-3093. We're sitting at minus 15 degrees here in Winnipeg. Sunshine is expected this morning with increasing cloud after lunch and a high of minus 5. For tonight, we have a chance of flurries. The temperature will rise to minus 3 by morning. And then for tomorrow, we're looking at a cloudy start, clearing after lunch, and a high of plus 2. Again, minus 15 degrees here in Winnipeg. Since 1974, Birds Hill Provincial Park has come alive with the sounds of the Winnipeg Folk Festival. We'll find out who is on the lineup for the 50th edition of the festival. That's coming up after 8 o'clock. I'm Margot Watt, in for Marcy Marcusa today. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio. World Report is up next.
Today on Q.
The Oscar-winning director Bong Joon-ho's new film is called Mickey 17, and it's about a man who can't die. He just keeps getting reprinted.
On Earth, nothing was working out, and I wanted to get the hell out of there.
Director Bong will be here to tell you what he hopes this movie might say about authoritarianism and bad politicians.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Bob Ezrin has produced the music of everyone from Pink Floyd to Kiss. He's had a great career in the United States. Now he's moved back to Toronto from Nashville, saying this is the time to stand up for Canada. Bob Ezrin coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. The U.S. may be temporarily stepping back from most of its tariffs on Canadian goods, but Canadian lawmakers say the retreat isn't enough. Ottawa and the provinces plan to keep their retaliations in place until all tariffs are off the table. Kate McKenna is following this from our Parliamentary Bureau. Kate, what's the reaction from the federal government?
One message is loud and clear from Ottawa and the provinces. This 30-day partial tariff pause is not good enough. The federal government won't lift $30 billion in retaliatory tariffs, even if it won't proceed with a second and bigger wave of retaliation in a few weeks. The on-again, off-again tariffs leave Canadian businesses in turmoil and uncertainty. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc spoke to CBC's Power and Politics.
Hopefully we're lining up a conversation and a discussion with the Americans that's much more coherent in the sense it's not this week, it's this sector of the economy.
He says the majority of trade to the U.S. can now meet the bar of being compliant with the existing free trade agreement and avoid tariffs for now. But there are other looming deadlines. There's a steel and aluminum tariff that could come into effect next week. There could be more tariffs on April 2nd. Plus, yesterday's announcement from Trump is being described as a pause, not a total walk back.
Kate, you mentioned the provinces. They've implemented their own retaliatory measures, and they're not backing down either. What can you tell us about that?
Provinces have announced their own ways of fighting back, including taking American booze off the shelves. And Ontario Premier Doug Ford is making good on his threat to slap a 25% levy on electricity his province sells to 1.5 million American customers. He's not the only one. British Columbia Premier David Eby says his government is planning a law that could toll trucks traveling to Alaska. And Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew says his government plans to review its contracts selling hydroelectricity to the United States. All of this in a bid to pressure Donald Trump to back down completely and send a clear message that this tariff whiplash hurts everyone.
Kate McKenna in Ottawa. Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
Donald Trump's trade war and his repeated talk about annexing Canada are prompting many Canadians to change their spring break travel plans. Many say they've rerouted their vacations to destinations outside of the U.S. And for more on this, we're joined by Linda Ward. So, Linda, what more can you tell us about this push to avoid travel across the border?
Leisure bookings to American cities are down. We're hearing from Flight Centre Travel Group Canada, who says that they have dropped 40% in February from the same month last year. And we're also hearing numbers from a number of airlines as well. Air Canada is offering 10% fewer flights to Florida, Arizona, Las Vegas, popular sun destinations for Canadians at this time of the year. WestJet is reporting a shift in bookings from the U.S. to Mexico and the Caribbean. Flair's U.S.-bound flights are down 24% year over year for March, and Sunwing Airlines has just scrapped all its U.S. flights altogether. And it's not just that people aren't booking, but they're also canceling. 1 in 5 customers canceled their trips to the United States over the past 3 months. In Ontario, kids are starting March break this afternoon, and Amy and Matthew Gleiser from Paris, Ontario, had planned to go to Myrtle Beach in South Carolina with their kids, but changed those plans.
With all of the tariff threats and this constant Canada is a 51st state, which we hate, we just didn't feel in good conscience that we could go down to the United States and spend money and, support an economy in a country that really is out to hurt us as Canadians right now.
So, Linda, do we have a sense of how all this might be affecting the U.S. travel industry?
Well, it will have an effect. The U.S. Travel Association has warned just a 10% drop in Canadian visitors. We're talking about 2 million fewer visits would mean more than $2 billion in lost spending and a loss of 14,000 jobs. Flight Centre now also says it has seen a pause in business travel to the United States. And if that gets worse, that would have a much larger impact.
Linda Ward joining us in studio. Thanks, Linda.
You're welcome.
The threat of those tariffs is reflected in the latest job numbers. As the economy braced for impact, Statistics Canada says the jobless rate for February went virtually unchanged from January at 6.6%. The Canadian economy added 1,100 new jobs, falling way short of what economists had expected, which was about 20,000 jobs. The agency also found that major snowstorms in eastern and central Canada meant nearly 500,000 Canadians lost hours of work last month. To France.
500 mètres à partir de ce point, merci.
A police officer in France directs pedestrians away from the site of an unexploded bomb from the Second World War. It was unearthed by workers near Paris's main train station. That has prompted rail travel to be suspended, including Eurostar trains to and from London. The travel chaos also spread to Paris's roads. A major highway and parts of the city's ring road are closed as bomb disposal teams work at the site. Bombs left over from both world wars are regularly discovered around France, but it's very rare to find them in such a crowded location. Overnight Russian attacks have killed at least 18 people in Ukraine, including 4 children. Fire crews in Kharkiv doused the flames. Officials say the strikes across the country lasted most of the night. They say Ukraine's energy and gas infrastructure also targeted. The attacks came just hours after a marathon EU summit agreed to a huge rise in defense spending on the continent. Anna Cunningham has more.
Yes, first of all, too tired. I wanted to start in German, but now I'm going to speak English.
An exhausted EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen took to the podium in Brussels close to midnight.
Today, history is being written.
27 EU leaders and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky concluding a 10-hour meeting.
We're coming out of this European Council very determined to ensure Europe's security and to act with the scale, the speed and the resolve that this situation demands.
A week on from the White House bust-up between President Zelensky, Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, Europe has rallied behind Ukraine. With one predictable exception, the Kremlin-friendly Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, failing to endorse the EU statement. Zelensky says he hopes the Saudi Arabian talks next week will be meaningful, working towards a fast and lasting peace. He will be in the country for a planned meeting with the Crown Prince, but won't attend the talks, leaving it to diplomats. It's understood the focus will be on a framework for peace. The discussions follow a letter Zelensky sent Trump saying Ukraine was ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible. Having Ukraine at the table is something both Canada and Europe have argued for in any eventual agreement to end Russia's war in Ukraine. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
A CBC Marketplace investigation has found popular gaming apps are profiling and tracking children. Its team of investigative journalists were even able to trace the whereabouts of a child in Toronto using data available for sale. As Christine Birak reports, it's all despite rules in place banning online collection of children's information.
Sliding his finger across the screen, 9-year-old Jamie's busy playing a mobile game based on its App Store rating.
It said E for everyone.
Mom Sarah Dermody assumed kids' privacy laws would apply, but we show her the game's fine print.
It says games are not meant to be used if you are under 16. Wow.
The age and the content rating doesn't always match the privacy policy.
It is really scandalous that it is so easy to get information from the kids like this.
Maude Bonifant is a Canada Research Chair on Gaming, Technologies and Society. She says many free game apps make money off ads and third parties collecting behavioral and other data, including location. Information's also being used to build profiles of people that other companies can pay to access in the future.
So we have a profiling really along long-term profiling of a person, and we can look at it when he will want to get a job.
The data
Posing as game developers, we approached 4 global data sellers to test whether their data included information on kids.
None of our data will have anyone under 16.
One gives us location data for over 500,000 devices in Toronto. Hundreds are at elementary schools. Intentional or not, we're able to confirm a specific child's walk to school, sometimes a convenience store, and back home for a month.
It is a bit scary.
After checking privacy settings and tracking on Jamie's devices, Sarah Dermody says she's not downloading any new apps without reading their privacy policy first. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
And you can watch that full investigation tonight at 8 p.m., 8:30 in Newfoundland on CBC TV, CBC Gem, or YouTube. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app, and on YouTube. I'm Margot Watt, sitting in for Marcy Marcusa. Coming up on the show, as you're hearing this morning, we are now knowing who is going to be playing at the Winnipeg Folk Festival this summer, and what a special edition of the festival it is. Its 50th edition. In just a moment, we will talk with the festival's artistic director and executive director about what to expect this summer at Birds Hill. We'll also play some music for you. We have some music lined up from one of the key artists that was just announced for this year's festival, so that's still to come as well. A complete look at your forecast heading into the weekend, and we'll check traffic to make sure it's a smooth start to your day this Friday if you're on the road. You're with Information Radio on CBC. The very latest from our CBC Newsroom now here in Winnipeg with Lauren Donnelly.
Good morning. After ordering U.S. climate scientists to stop talking to their Canadian counterparts, the Trump administration started cutting more than 1,000 jobs, or 10% of the workforce, from the U.S. National Weather Service. Canadian scientists say they're worried about losing access to data needed to predict dangerous events. In Manitoba, liquor and lotteries will keep American liquor off store shelves, even though the U.S. president has decided to delay his tariffs on some Canadian goods. The co-owner of one private Winnipeg wine store says they have no choice but to sell their existing inventory, but they'll do it at a discount. Your next local news is at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Let's check in on the forecast. Here's Abby.
Good morning. Conditions vary from sunny in the south to cloudy and snowy conditions up north. Looking at conditions for Winnipeg and surrounding areas, we're seeing temperatures around minus 14 at this time. The sun is out. It's a sunny start to your Friday into the weekend. Some clouds will roll in later in the afternoon. We warm up to about minus 5. And then tonight, mostly cloudy conditions will come with a very slight chance of light snow late in the evening into the overnight period. We'll see temperatures climbing to minus 3 by the morning. And then for tomorrow, your Saturday morning, it will be a cloudy start. Then we see some clearing and some sunshine as you get into the day. We warm up to plus 2 tomorrow. So in the south, it's more of like a mix of sun and clouds, and temperatures around minus 5 in the southern regions. And then moving up north, we have more of like a snow, about 2 to 5 centimeters expected in the Churchill region. But for Winnipeg, it's more about the sun and the clouds today, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Traffic-wise, we haven't had any problems this morning.
No calls to the commuter line. And I guess people don't want to talk to me this morning. My theory is they aren't focused on the commute. They're focused on just like eagerly awaiting that Folk Fest lineup. I think that's on lots of Winnipeggers' minds. So, like, who needs to tell Chloe about the commute when we have Folk Fest lineups to talk about? I mean, I'm feeling the same way. But if there is something on your commute that you think your fellow commuters should know about, you can always call our commuter line at 204-788-3093.
It was 1974 at Birds Hill Provincial Park. Thousands descended on the park to hear music from the likes of Bruce Cockburn, John Hammond, Murray McLaughlin. That musical weekend would evolve into the annual Winnipeg Folk Festival. Now, in 2025, they have unveiled the lineup that will make up the 50th edition of the festival. Joining us now via Zoom are the Winnipeg Folk Festival's Executive Director, Valerie Shantz, and Artistic Director, Chris Freyer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Chris, who are some of the key performers at the 50th edition of the Folk Festival?
Well, we have 70 plus performers coming to the event this year, but notably, we have a couple artists that are returning to headline this year who performed at past festivals. Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit were at the festival in 2015. And so they're making a return to the festival. And then there was a little known band in 2013 that played called Lake Street Dive, and they've gone on to become a Grammy Award-winning group that is now selling out large venues, amphitheaters, and such in the U.S. And so they're making a return from their humble beginnings. And of course, for the first time, we have Gillian Welch and David Rawlings, who won the Grammy this year for Folk Recording of the Year. So that's some of the names, of course. And Waxahachie, also known as Katie Crutchfield, was actually in the same category. So Ani DeFranco, festival favorites, the Cat Empire and the Paper Kites, and Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, and and just a ton of other great stuff that we just hope people dive into and explore and discover what we have. Not unlike other years, we've got a lot of talent that we want that'll be new to the festival for the first time. And we'll also have a bunch of artists who've played throughout the last 5 decades, including the very first festival.
So exciting.
Who
are some of the Manitoba musicians taking the stage?
Well, we have Begonias playing this year, Rami Mays, and Slow Spirit, and Leonard Sumner. And of course, Fred Penner is playing. He's going to actually kick off the festival on Thursday night. We always have a Manitoba act, so Fred's stepping up to do that this year. And of course, we'll have the zany antics of Al Simmons. I think he's played the festival 14 times.
Wow.
So. We're really excited about all the different folks who are coming from far away and just down the street.
And you mentioned, Chris, performers who were there for the very first festival back in 74.
Yeah, so there's Kathy Fink and Marcy Marks who were there the first festival. Also Ben Mink, who's an artist who plays in a local group. He lives in BC, but he plays with Myron and Victor Schultz, who are in Manitoba band Finjan. So Ben's coming. He played in a band called the String Band. They were at the first festival in 1974. So he'll be making his way back. And then, and then just some of the next generation folks will be involved in like legacy workshops. So like Leonard Podolak and the Ducks will also be involved in it. And we'll definitely be giving some space for some stories of past festivals and some music. We'll have like a main workshop at the festival to celebrate the history of the event. It's been basically trying to put together a lineup that kind of reflects kind of where we've been and where we are and where we're heading, and looking kind of forward to the next 50 years. So
it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Valerie, the very first folk festival is mentioned back in 1974. As executive director, what does that legacy mean to you as you look forward to this summer?
Well, after I accepted the position here, I was told I was at the first festival. So that
oh, really?
So part of it is it's a family history of coming to the festival for so many decades and of loving the festival. But I started as ED last January, and I was really aware that this landmark was coming up, and really wanting to work with the whole team here to sort of honor our past and move us forward into the future. So it's a nice pivot point for us, I think, as a festival. 50 is a significant landmark. Not everybody makes it, and we're just thrilled to be celebrating it this year.
So since you were at the very first one, I have to ask you what stands out from that festival.
Well, as I remember it, I was too to remember.
What were you saying there, Chris?
No, I was just saying, oh, geez.
Where did that time go?
Where did that time go? I don't know.
So
those were early days for everyone that worked at this organization.
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
Were you there too, Chris, back then?
No, I wasn't. I guess I would have been about 3 or so. But I mean, I think the important thing to state is that, like, you know, we came out of the, you know, this, of course, this would have happened a couple years ago. The 50th would have been in 2023. And not really technically, but we won't get into that part. But I just, you know, when we came out of the pandemic, we were like, there's no way we can just jump into 50th anniversary mode after what we'd been through. And actually, the 2022 festival was remarkably difficult. We had tons of cancellations, tons of missed baggage, lost baggage, and all sorts of obstacles. So it was really good to just kind of take a deep breath and just kind of give ourselves some preparatory time to just get everything together so we could do this right, because you only turn 50 once.
I hope so.
Right?
Speaking for myself.
Yeah, me too.
Valerie, I'm wondering, the tariffs, the uncertainty with our neighbors to the south, is all of that affecting plans at all for the festival?
Well, we've certainly been watching it and seeing it come down. I mean, the American dollar affects us. There are limited amount of things that we need to pay for in American funds. That has a big impact on us. We're mindful of it. We're mindful of it for our suppliers, like our beer vendor, for example, and aluminum costs going up. But for the most part, it's about the uncertainty. And so we know that impacts our audience and their decisions about whether to attend a festival of our kind. So far, we're seeing extremely strong ticket sales, and so we aren't seeing kind of a faltering on that point. And then the other thing is, of course, we actually have a few American volunteers who come up to volunteer for the festival, and we have American audience, and we want to make sure that they know it's still going to be a safe and welcoming place. I mean, the Folk Fest is about bringing people together, and even though there might be disagreements happening amongst governments, those at Folk Fest really just want to be together, and we want to maintain that similar kind of culture and feel at the festival. And I'm not concerned about that. I'm confident that's going to happen.
So when you look into the future, the next 50 years, how do you see the Folk Festival?
I think the Folk Festival has to continue to evolve. You know, we are a community-based event, and so we need to reflect our community. And just as the Folk Festival has evolved over the first 5 decades, we will continue to evolve. But there is some really anchoring spirit to the organization around volunteerism, around being together, about loving each other, caring for each other, that I think is we're going to still see in the next 50 years that's going to shape the community element of this amazingly beloved event. Mm-hmm. So, what the music will look like in 50 years is going to be fascinating, and in all the decades in between. But I feel like the spirit of the festival will maintain.
So, Chris, I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but let me ask you about one of your favorite memories of the Folk Festival from over the years. What stands out for you, Chris?
Oh, probably the first. I think my first festival in 2005 that I programmed was just having, lining up Emmylou Harris with Daniel Lanois.
Wow.
On the main stage, and just having the. It wasn't like that long after Wrecking Ball had come out, and it was such a great record, and it was won a Grammy and everything. And I think there was that idea of being able to have them together, and just with the fact that Daniel had produced the record and they did the Maker on main stage together, and the wind was hitting about 80 kilometers an hour, and Emily's hair and her scarf and everything was like flowing through the back. And they were singing, and it was just, this is actually like probably wouldn't even happen these days because they would have been off the stage already because of the wind and everything. But little we know 20 years ago. But that was definitely a great one. And then I guess just the other one too was like Ray Davies from the Kinks, playing Sunday in 2008, did Lola, the famous Kinks song Lola, and it was like you could hear people from the campground that were at the festival singing along. And it was after the coldest Saturday in the festival's history. It was like +5. There's flurries at night, and then it was like a classic, Manitoba's summer where it was like 30 degrees on the Sunday, and you could see everyone that had left were all coming back to the site again, and it was exactly what we needed to get us through that Sunday after we moved the main stage to Green Ash stage because we literally couldn't use our main stage anymore. It was so wet, and just the perseverance, and throughout all these years, the show has always gone off. It's always happened. Maybe it's only 3 songs from Wilco, or it's a shorter set because of a show stop, but the show always gets to happen in some kind of way, and it's pretty awesome testament to the team and the people that that produced the event with us. So it's there's countless. I could regale you with stories for days, but a lot of them are that. But a lot of them is just like obviously the familial stuff too, being there 3 generations. With my son, my dad, myself, seeing that in other people. With the 3 generations of their family at the festival, or even 4 generations in some cases. And and then just growing up at the festival, like being there. Haven't missed a festival since 1985. I've been to every festival since 1985. And just going from sleeping under a picnic table in the rain in the campground in 1985 to having the privilege to to book the festival for these last 20 years. So
Amazing.
Lots of stories. Maybe I'll write a very short book someday.
I think you could write a very long book, and I think we'd all read it. Chris, Valerie?
We have a bunch of we've just discovered all these funny books that we have from over the years, but we have everything from folk festival cookbooks.
Oh, that's fantastic.
The folk festival, 40 years of poetry.
Oh, wow.
And,
so much history there.
So much history, yeah.
Chris, Valerie, thanks so much for joining us today. All the best with this year's festival.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Valerie Shantz, Chris Freyer from the Winnipeg Folk Festival. Here's one of the groups you'll hear at this year's festival, the Cat Empire.
There's a dream that haunts my nights of wild black horses out in flight. A kind of free I'd never been, a kind of beast I'd never seen. Why do all things end in pain? I call the ghosts and ask their names. Is that love you're running from? If you lead, then I will come. And while you're still young, find your heart and find your song. Now where have you gone? No matter where you're going and no
And that
matter where
is
you're
the Cat Empire out of Australia with Still Young. They are one of the headliners at the 50th edition of the Winnipeg Folk Festival this summer. At 8:27, let's find out what's on Radio Noon today with Marjorie Dowhouse. Good morning, Marjorie.
Good morning, Margot. I like that tune, by the way. It's a good Friday tune.
Isn't it? A good wake you up, get you going?
Get you going, yeah.
Yeah, so what's on the show today?
So we are talking about how to date safely in 2025. At the Winnipeg Women's Show this weekend at the RBC Convention here in Winnipeg, a special session is going to be held talking about, a lot of people are turning to dating apps online to find that connection, but how do you do it safely? So we're going to have a local matchmaker who's teaming up with Winnipeg Police Service to do that session, or who's doing that session at the Women's Show here in Winnipeg, to talk about what you should look for. How do you protect yourself, and how do you navigate the dating scene in 2025 when a lot of people are turning to online dating to find that connection?
What an interesting set of perspectives there from the matchmaker and from police about what they see in real life, what's happening.
Absolutely. So we're going to be asking some questions. We're also going to open up the line so that you can ask some questions. Maybe you have some comments, a story that maybe you want to share with listeners. So we're going to have that call in coming up at 12:30 on Radio Noon.
All right, we'll tune in for that. Thank you, Marjorie.
Thanks, Margot.
Marjorie Dowhouse. Dowhost is the host of Radio Noon. That's what I'm saying. It is minus 15 degrees here in Winnipeg, a mix of sun and cloud for today with a high of minus 5. For the weekend, some sun, some cloud, and milder temperatures. We will be above zero tomorrow with a high of plus 2. I'm Margot Watt. You're tuned in to Information Radio here on CBC, and our news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg at 8:30. It's minus 14 degrees, mainly sunny at the airport. Sunny today with increasing cloudiness this afternoon, a high of minus 5. The Manitoba Association of Healthcare Professionals says their strike has been postponed. The group bargained into the wee hours of the morning. A representative confirmed that a tentative agreement has been reached and that its members will go to work as normal today. MAHCP represents 7,000 healthcare workers, including paramedics, physiotherapists, social workers, and lab techs. Cuts to weather forecasting and climate science in the U.S. has Canadian scientists concerned. The Trump administration has cut 10% of the staff at U.S. National Weather Service and its parent organization. Scientists at the universities of Winnipeg and Manitoba say they're concerned about the reliability of U.S. weather and climate data. Canada needs this data to predict dangerous events like blizzards, thunderstorms, and floods. Jared Marquis is an atmospheric sciences professor at the University of North Dakota. He says the Grand Forks Weather Office was understaffed even before the cuts.
As you start decreasing the number of staff or increasing the stress on these staff while they still have the same number of tasks to do, at some point something's going to have to break. Hopefully it's something that's not mission critical, something that's not going to affect lives.
A spokesperson for the National Weather Service in Maryland says the organization does not discuss internal personnel matters. A private wine store in Winnipeg can't afford to stop selling its existing stock of U.S. products. The Porium on Portage Avenue says it has more than $250,000 of wines from south of the border. It's advertising them at a discount to get rid of current inventory because of the trade war. They're calling it a 25% reverse tariff. Co-owner Scott Holden says while they won't be bringing in any new U.S. wines, they have to keep cash flowing so they can pay to bring in bottles from other countries, including Canada.
What we have in terms of as being a small business owner now is that we actually have quite a bit of product in-house here that we've paid for that we can't just sit on.
Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries will keep American liquor off store shelves, even though the U.S. president has decided to delay his tariffs on some Canadian goods. A spokesperson from MBLL says it's keeping existing inventory rather than returning or destroying it. The Crown Corporation says it doesn't have figures to share on the financial impact of this move. 2 men are recovering after being randomly stabbed Wednesday afternoon. The first incident happened in the 800 block of Main Street. Police found a 37-year-old man suffering from a stab wound in the upper body. Police say a verbal argument escalated with the 37-year-old being stabbed. Police say the suspect approached a 61-year-old near Portage in Main about an hour later and asked him for a cigarette. He then stabbed the second victim in the upper body and fled. Both victims were taken to hospital in unstable condition and later upgraded to stable. Police found the 23-year-old man on Portage Avenue and took him into custody. A Roblin, Manitoba family is dealing with a double tragedy after a pair of deaths in Mexico last week. 78-year-old Marcel Gregoire and his 48-year-old daughter, Canine, were found dead Sunday inside their rented apartment in Mazatlan. Autopsies determined they died from two different medical conditions. Joel Gregoire flew to Mexico on Monday. He says his father and sister had ongoing health problems.
There's no suspicion from my part based on what I know of their health and the way the autopsy came back. It's a weird coincidence that they both went down at the same time, but the findings weren't unexpected based on their health.
Compounding the tragedy, Gregoire's 80-year-old mother, Linda, spent 2 days alone in the apartment after her husband and daughter died. He says she's recovering in hospital from dehydration. Another setback for Elon Musk's aerospace company.
Getting video down from the ship, you can see we've lost several engines and we've lost attitude control of the vehicle.
That is SpaceX mission control in Texas as a Starship rocket exploded last night just moments after liftoff. Some of the debris scattered over vast areas of the Caribbean, forcing flights to be diverted in and around the Turks and Caicos Islands. It also led to delays at 4 Florida airports. This is the second time in less than 2 months that a SpaceX mega rocket has exploded during a test flight. Finally, the latest jobs report suggests Canadian businesses may be slowing their hiring plans in the face of the U.S. tariff crisis. Statistics Canada says 1,100 new jobs were added to the economy last month. This is well short of the 20,000 that many analysts had been predicting. As a result, the unemployment rate remains at 6.6%, which is where it was in January. As well, major snowstorms in eastern and central Canada meant more than 400,000 Canadians lost work hours last month. That is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
Thanks very much, Lauren.
You're welcome.
And as we make our plans for this weekend, let's check out the forecast with Abby.
Yeah, let's kickstart with today. Southern Manitoba from Winnipeg all the way down to the Parkland region. We're going to be seeing sunny stats, increasing cloudiness, and a chance of light snow in some of the regions, warming up to around -5 in some areas, and some areas would see -1, and then mainly cloudy conditions into the evening. Up north, we're seeing more like snow and that wind chill. But for Winnipeg today, we are at -14, warming up to -5, and it's going to be a beautiful day this week, tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
And we want to say thank you to the entire current affairs team here at CBC Manitoba for bringing you the wonderful stories here on our program. Our associate producers, Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, Kalkadon Mulugute, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, May McKillop, Marshall Hodgins, Dylan Longhurst, Issa Kickson, Jim Agapito, Chloe Friesen, Bruce Layden. Our community reporters are Shanley Vidal and Jim. Our hosts, Marcy Marcusa, Nadia Kidwai, Faith Fundel, Marjorie Dowhouse. Our producers, Wendy Parker and Donna Carrero. Our YouTube producers, Travis Peterson and Kevin Nipatebo. Nellie Gonzalez is the show producer of our Current Affairs unit. Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio. I'm Margot Watt, your backup energy host, in for Marcy Marcusa again today. It's been a pleasure. The Current is up next.